Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has Kurama dormant bloodline. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by MROI4TW and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1, New Powers and Training. It was a quiet night in Konoha. The birds slept in their nests. Young children were either being rocked to sleep by their parents, or being read bedtime stories. Shops had closed their doors for the night, and the homes were still lit as young couples snuggled together in front of the fireplace. Oh, and a young boy was being chased by a mob. Wait, what? Let's see what's going on here, shall we? The young boy was about 5 or so years of age. He had 3 whisker marks on each cheek, spiky blonde hair that went in all directions, and cerulean blue eyes. The boy had pretty much been doing this for a while now. He had always been chased like this on his birthday. He didn't know what he did, but he knew one thing: if he didn't keep running he would die. The boy was managing to keep a good distance up until he tripped over a rock and fell. Then the mob caught up with him. The boy screamed as tears of agony ran down his face. Time to die, demon. A member of the mob yelled, "We'll send you back to hell where you belong." Please, the boy begged, stop. What did I do? What did you do? A female mob member asked. You killed our beloved Yondaime as well as my son. Now we're going to finish what he started. The beating continued with the boy taking each punch and kick. Some even took out knives and started to carve up his flesh. After a few minutes, the Hokage, an aged man wearing robes and a hat that had the kanji for fire on it, and some ANBU appeared. What are you doing? Sarutobi yelled. We're getting rid of the demon and finishing what the Yondaime started, said the leader of the mob. ANBU, the old man said, take them away and tell Ibiki and Anko not to hold back. The ANBU around him went in and rounded up every last member in the mob before taking them away to do time with Ibiki. The Hokage picked up Naruto and then took him to the hospital. The elderly man set Naruto in a room, hooked him up to an IV and then left. As he did, he turned to the doctor and growled, if I find anything else wrong with him, then there already is. I swear I will find you and rip you apart. Meanwhile, in another dimension, a woman of about 20 years of age stood in front of a mirror. She was about 5'2" with long white hair, pale skin, purple eyes, and ruby red lips. She had an hourglass figure with a developed chest and long slender legs. A man would drool at the sight of this woman if it weren't for the look of intense rage on her face. This was the Shinigami. I can't believe those good-for-nothing hairless monkeys. Shinigami raved in pure anger. I have to do something to help the kid out. The goddess of death tapped her chin and had a look of complete and total thought on her face before a look of inspiration crossed her face. She grinned as she walked over to what looked like a large mirror. She then reached in and searched around. Now where are you? She asked out loud. Aha! She pulled her hands out of the mirror. As she did, she pulled 2 men out of it. The first was tall and wore a black leather jacket with a red design on the back and the hood up, blue jeans and sneakers. The second was a bald guy wearing mostly black with a little red and a piece of metal on his shoulder. On the belt of his outfit were 2 cylinder-like objects. Welcome back, Alex Mercer and Starkiller, the Shinigami said, identifying 2 men. Who are you supposed to be? Mercer, the guy with the jacket, asked with a scowl. My name is Sora, the woman said, or as most people call me, the Shinigami or Death Goddess. The 2 gazed at her for a few seconds. You don't look like a Death Goddess, Alex said in his usual monotone voice. Oh really? The woman said. And what is a being of death supposed to look like? Starkiller responded for Mercer by saying, ugly, monstrous, evil, and a whole lot of other things that you just aren't. Sora was quiet for a second before she suddenly burst into a haze of black smoke. When it faded, it showed a hideous monstrosity with pale skin, visible black veins, and what looked like faces that were in agony all over in its body. The only thing on its face was a large mouth that was filled with teeth. Believe me now? The monster asked. Yes, both said. Needless to say, they were pretty scared of the monster that stood in front of them. Alex, despite his usually monotone nature, was close to wetting himself. He had seen some pretty freaky things before. This was something that actually made his skin crawl. Starkiller was actually scared. The form Sora took made the Garag he fought while saving General Kota seemed like a puppy in comparison to this monster. Sora took her beautiful form again and addressed the 2 after sweeping a lock of hair out of her face. Now then, what I'm about to show you is probably going to make you really angry, or scar you for the rest of your lives, she said while she placed her hands on both of their foreheads. The 2 were then shown images of Naruto's life. The assassination attempts, the beatings, being ignored, given overpriced rotten food. Needless to say, the fact that they were mad was very obvious. Starkiller was unintentionally calling on the force. The ground beneath cracked from the large amounts of pressure. A few things around him actually started to bend. His hands also crackled with force lightning as his rage really started to manifest. Alex's biomass was rippling across him like a raging sea. The arms were slowly forming claws as he was unconsciously thinking of ways to make the villagers who would do this to a boy pay. In fact, the only thing that was keeping him from going down there and going all homicidal on them was the fact that he had no idea where they were. When the images were done and over with, there was a tense silence among the 2 humans and the goddess. Why? Starkiller asked after a few minutes of silence. Why would they do this to a boy? And what can we do about it? To answer the first question, it started when he was born, Sora explained. When he was born, a demon called QB attacked. The boy's father fought it, and then sealed it inside of him. When he did, he thought the boy would be seen as a hero among the people. Apparently the little punk was dead wrong, Alex growled. You think? Sora asked before getting serious. Now I want you two to go train him in what you do. Train him? Alex asked a little shocked. I can't go infect this kid with this virus. How do you know he won't go crazy with power and kill everyone in his way? I can't give you all the details, Sora said. But this kid has a really important role in the future, and if this keeps up he won't be able to do it. Alex groaned, but relented. He figured if it was important then he would have to just go ahead and do it. No matter how much he didn't want to. He always did hate to take orders. Now I'll be sending you straight down to the village the boy is in, Sora said. Head for the hospital and grab the boy. He should be in room 212. While you're doing that I have some business to take care of. With that the three vanished in plumes of creepy black smoke. In the land of the living, in plumes of black smoke, Starkiller and Alex Mercer appeared in an alley not far from the hospital. How in the hell are we supposed to find this kid anyway? Alex asked as the two walked out into the street, which was abandoned this time of night since the mob was sent to Ibiki. We head for the hospital, Starkiller replied, then we grab the boy and get out of here. With that the two long-dead warriors made a dash toward the hospital. They entered the large building and wound up getting stopped by the receptionist. Pardon me gentlemen, she said, but the hospital is closed at the time. Alex was about to consume her or slice her when Starkiller waved his hand in front of her face and said sleep. The receptionist suddenly felt very tired. She fell over, but Starkiller caught her and laid her down in the chair at the receptionist's desk. Whoa, Alex said, how did you do that? Starkiller headed for the elevator and started to explain. The Force allows me to do a great deal of things. One of which is to manipulate the weak-minded. Alex whistled and said, talk about playing mind games. I just consume a person and take their place to mess with my enemies. Upon hearing that, Starkiller was intrigued. Really? Vader's former apprentice asked, how did you manage that? The hooded man looked at him before saying, I'll tell you later. At that moment the two arrived at room 212. They walked in to see Naruto asleep with the IV still connected to him. Alex walked in and slowly removed the IV from the boy's arm. After looking, the man was shocked to see the small prick in the blonde's arm from the IV was already healing. Must be because of that QB thing, Alex thought as he slowly picked up the blonde boy. What are you doing? A female voice asked. Alex and Starkiller turned to see two people. One was a woman with purple hair and a cat mask, while the other was a man with gravity-defying silver hair with a dog mask. Put the boy down, the guy in the dog mask said. Don't worry, Starkiller said, we aren't going to hurt the boy. Though he was wearing a mask, Starkiller could sense the suspicion in the man. I know what you're doing, the man in the dog mask said, and I won't allow you to bring the demon back. The man took a stance and tried to focus chakra into his hand, and he probably would have if he hadn't been bashed over the head with the spine of a katana. He never really did get over his sensei's death. The woman in the cat mask said, what do you plan on doing with my little Otuto? Our boss wants him, Alex said, we're taking away from here to train. At that moment Naruto stirred in Alex's arms and turned to Nico sleepily. Nico Ne-chan? The boy asked sleepily, what's going on, Naruto-kun? Nico said as she looked at him, these two are friends of mine. They're going to take you away from here. You can train there and be safe. I want you to grow strong, okay? Okay, Naruto said as he yawned, good night Ne-chan. The blonde yawned and got comfy before falling asleep. You better keep that boy safe, Nico said with a dangerous tone. If I find out that someone found his body I will hunt you down, torture you, and then make you wish you never left the sanctity of your mother's womb. Alex would have chuckled, but since this girl was radiating a small amount of killing intent he was wary. Got it, Alex said before turning and heading out the door. As soon as Starkiller and Alex were clear of the hospital, the two then started running like hell for the closest way out of the village. Meanwhile, Sarutobi Hiruzen was currently asleep in bed. As he slept he was unaware of the goddess of death currently looming over high sleeping from. The woman took a deep breath and yelled, wake up you miserable old monkey. Sarutobi cried out in surprise as he jumped up and nearly hit his head on the ceiling after being scared out of his sleep. He looked at the woman angrily before he paled in fear as he realized who and what he was talking to. I got a bone to pick with you, old man, Sora growled. Shinigami Dano, Sarutobi said with a look of fear on his face. What are you doing here? I want answers, she growled. I want to know why is it you let the Yandame's son be treated so badly? Why did you let him be picked on and be treated like a pariah instead of letting him know who he was and why he was treated as such? I kept it from him so he could live a normal life, Sarutobi stuttered. At that moment he was picked up by the collar of his pajamas and hoisted well over the Shinigami's head. Do you call being given overpriced rotten food, being beaten on his birthday, and being forced to live in a dump of an apartment normal? What? The old man said, he lives in the orphanage. Sora groaned in frustration and set him down as she said, he was thrown out of the orphanage 2 years ago when he turned 3. I believe the woman who runs the place said, you're old enough to watch after yourself, demon. Come back here again and you'll be facing ANBU. The old man growled slightly as he heard that. We can feel angry later, Sora said with a growl. I need you to hand over Naruto's inheritance. Sarutobi would have argued, but what was the point in arguing with a woman who could control whether you live or not? already had to deal with this with his wife. The old man then walked over to the closet and took out a large scroll. On it was the picture of a swirl. I don't think I need to tell you what this is, Sarutobi said. You don't, Sora said, taking the scroll. Now I expect those who hurt the boy to be punished. Only the adults, though the kids don't know any better. I understand, Sarutobi said. Good, the death goddess said with a smile. Since that's being taken care of, I'll be leaving. However, if I find you've gone and done something stupid, I will personally tear your soul apart. Got it? Sarutobi gulped and stuttered. Why, yes, ma'am. Sora turned to leave when she decided to ask, by the way, why do you have the secrets to an extremely powerful clan hidden in your closet? Sarutobi chuckled before answering, because it's the last place anyone would expect to find a scroll. The ones in the Namake's vault are fake. Sora cocked her head to the side in confusion before saying, then what's in the vault? The old man chuckled before saying, I pulled one out of Naruto's book for this. They're trap scrolls that are actually filled with the one thing straight male would ever want. Sora was quiet for a moment before she burst out laughing like a maniac. She shook her head as she calmed down and vanished in a plume of black smoke. At some location in the forests around Konoha, Alex and Starkiller were still running a good distance from Konoha when there was a plume of black smoke and Sora appeared. Do you got him? Sora asked. We got him, Starkiller said, but I have to ask who will train the boy in the ways of this world? Things are done quite differently here than home. Sora smirked and said, I think I got that one covered. The death goddess then ran her hand over the boy's stomach. She then reached out and said, take my hand, you two. I want him to meet you too. The two looked at each other and reluctantly touched the woman's hand. Then there was a flash, and the three were gone. In Naruto's mind, the three then reappeared in what looked like a large sewer. At their feet was the blonde who was fast asleep. Stupid humans, a voice growled out. Everyone turned to see a large cage that Alex and Starkiller hadn't noticed before. How did we miss that? The two thought. Oh, Kagome-chan, Sora called out in a sing-song voice, we need to have a little chat. Slowly a pair of large red eyes opened behind the bars of the cage. Sora-chan, the voice said, if I had known you were coming I would have cleaned up a bit. The figure came forward to show a giant red-furred fox with 9 swishing tails and massive teeth. Starkiller and Alex both looked a little nervous because of the aura this monster gave off. Kagome Kyubi looked down and raised an eyebrow at the two. What are these two doing here? The monstrous fox asked with a growl. Easy there, Shinigami said. I brought these two to help out the boy that has become your container. By the way, could you take a different form? I think it's a little creepy to our little friends here. The large fox let out a slight huff and was covered in smoke for a quick second. When the smoke faded, both Alex and Starkiller's jaws hit the ground. In front of them stood a woman about 20 or so years of age. She had an hourglass figure, well-sized hips, slender legs, a well-developed bust, flowing crimson hair, crimson eyes with slit pupils, and a pair of ruby-red lips that had a pair of fangs visible. Kagome sauntered up to the cage bars and looked at the two before saying in a flirtatious voice, see something you like, boys? Despite being well-trained, the two men were then launched back by nosebleeds of epic proportions. Sora huffed and muttered, they didn't react like that to me. Kyubi giggled before saying, some got it and some don't. Now what is it you came here for? Finally come to take my soul? Sora turned to her and said, I'll explain as soon as our two friends here wake up. After a few minutes the two woke up after their bodies remade all the blood that they had lost. Now then, Sora said, I brought these two back to life so that they could train your container. They'll train them in their ways, but I want you to teach him the whole ninja way of life. Kagome raised an eyebrow and asked, why should I train a boy? Sora brought up a hand counted off on her fingers. 1. I know you don't like seeing this kid be hurt. 2. If your container is weak then you are seen as weak. 3. Giving some convincing other than your training he may let you out of here. Kagome seemed to think about that for a minute and then shrugged. What the hell, she said, besides when he's older he'll probably be fun to tease. Sora then knelt beside Naruto and tapped his head. Oh Naruto, wake up, Sora said in a motherly tone, I got some ramen for you. The young blonde stirred and muttered in his sleep, where's ramen-chan? Sora and Kagome looked at each other before chuckling a bit at the fact that Naruto just gave an honorable suffix to his favorite food. After they finished laughing, Sora leaned down and yelled, wake up, brat. The blonde jumped up and yelled, who? What? When? Where? Why? Who are you people and who's the model in the cage? Kagome felt herself flush slightly as she was called a model. Naruto, Sora said, gaining the young boy's attention, you're going to want to sit down. I have a lot of explaining to do. That was when Sora explained she was the Shinigami, the model was the Kyubi, who was sealed in him by his father, the Yondaime, and that the two men that were with her were going to train him in the arts so that he could become incredibly powerful. This was actually a lot to take in, which was obvious by the blonde's blank stare when they were done explaining. The boy was staring into space for a few seconds before saying, why me? Why did he have to choose me? Sora put her arm around the upset boy and said, he didn't want to put another family through that. Besides, by you not getting adopted it saved you some pain. The blonde looked at her curiously and asked, how? Well, if it was an Uchiha they probably would have trained you into the ground, she explained, listing on her fingers. Some of the Inuzuka probably would have used you in regular hunts, and the Hyuga probably would have toyed with the seal on you, which would have killed you. The blonde looked at her and said, good point. So what are they going to teach me and how is she going to help me? Kagome spoke up by explaining, Well, these two really exist in the real world. Sora here just brought them in here to introduce you so you wouldn't think you were being kidnapped. You can let me out by tearing off half of the seal on the cage here. The blonde looked at her skeptically before saying, you aren't going to try and eat me, are you? The demonic vixen looked at him before laughing and said, I don't eat humans. They don't have a really good taste anyway. The blonde still looked skeptically at her before reaching up and pulling off half of the seal. As soon as he did, there was a sudden flash of red chakra and the blonde blacked out. Back in the real world, Alex and Starkiller groaned as they woke up. They looked down to see a slightly taller blonde Naruto. They also saw that Kagome was sitting next to them. She shook her head to try and clear the cobwebs. She looked down at the blonde who was currently asleep. She reached down and scooped the boy up into her arms. The blonde moaned in his sleep as he snuggled into the unknown warmth. He snuggled into Kagome's chest, making her blush slightly. Soft warm, the blonde muttered. She blushed slightly brighter. A few hours later, near the border of Hai no Kuni, Fire Country, and Mizu no Kuni, Water Country, the blonde woke up with a groan. He looked around and saw he was in a small room. The blonde, who was always wary when he found himself in places he didn't know, got up and easily made his way to the door. He opened it and saw that it was upstairs. The blonde then traveled downstairs and smelled something cooking. The blonde then made his way to the kitchen where he found Alex, Starkiller, and Kagome waiting for him. Morning, Naruto. Kagome said, I already made some breakfast if you want some. So that wasn't a crazy dream, Naruto said, that really happened. Cool. The blonde sat down and joined the three for breakfast. As they ate, Naruto had to ask, so who are you guys anyway, and what are you going to teach me? Kagome swallowed some of the toast she had been eating and said, I guess we should get to know each other since we're going to be together for a while. Long, dark, and mysterious can go first. Alex glared at her before speaking. My name is Alex Mercer. In my time I worked for a company called Gentech. Secretly they were developing a virus that infected many people, turning them into monsters. I found out about it and threatened to release it. Unfortunately some Gentech goons killed me and the virus was released anyway. I woke up later in a morgue faster and stronger than ever. I slowly developed multiple powers and I found that I had many abilities that helped me survive. Long story short, what didn't kill me always made me stronger. After a lot of hunting I killed all the people who did this to me. After a while I got sick of living, so I infected a man named James Heller. He evolved, becoming stronger than me, and he managed to kill me. That's pretty much it. Naruto was staring at the man with a look of slight wonder and fear. He made a mental note not to piss this guy off in fear of being killed. My turn, Starkiller said. I am called Starkiller by my old master. In my time a large evil empire ruled most of the galaxy. My master, a man named Vader, was one of the most powerful warriors in the empire. When I was a child, said master took me in. After many years of training he sent me after Jedi, warriors of great power and skill. After killing a few I was betrayed by my master. After long hard battles I fought my master, but gave up the chance of me revenge to save my allies. I am unsure of what happened next. I awoke later in isolation. In my time technology was more advanced. Taking a person's DNA you could create a perfect copy to take their place. I was unsure if I was the real one or a clone. Eventually I broke away from my former master, and when the time came I fought him again. I had him at my mercy, but I did not kill him. He was taken into custody, put on trial, and executed. I lived the rest of my life with my love Juno. That is my story. Naruto stared at the man with a look of wonder on his face. This man was like a knight, only without the armor. My turn, Kagome said. My name is Kagome. I don't really have a last name. Most people know me and as the Kyuubi no Yoko. She paused at that to see Naruto's reaction. To her surprise he started laughing. What's so funny? The woman asked. It's just that I thought Kyuubi was a male, Naruto said. He regretted it after becoming the center of a glare from Kagome. What? Are you saying a woman can't be strong? The woman asked in a tone that said, answer wrong and die. Naruto gulped and answered, no, I just never expect such a lovely woman to be a demon is all. Kagome lost her vicious look and he said, well, aren't you sweet? Anyway, you are basically going to be taught ninja skills from me and skills by these two over here. Naruto looked at them and said, so you're all going to train me? They all nodded in response. Naruto was quiet and then yelled, yes. Now I'll become the greatest Hokage my village has ever known. Databio. The three stared at the boy for a second. Alex got up and said, Lesson 1. The hooded man then brought his fist down on Naruto's head. Itai. The blonde yelled as he nursed the newly formed lump on his head. What was that for? Alex crossed his arms and said, that was to wake you up from your little dream world, kid. The blonde raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Starkiller got up and said, if you keep doing loud stuff like that you will be spotted and executed. Plus, do you really believe your enemy will let you go through a long and boisterous speech? The blonde looked at him and probably would have made a comeback. But a quick glare from the bald man made him not. So, Naruto said as they cleaned their dishes, what are you going to teach me exactly? Starkiller smirked before holding out his hand. Slowly the clean plates rose up and floated over the cabinet. The cabinet opened and the plates went inside. You can control things with your mind? The blonde asked the bald force user. Yes, Starkiller said, among other things. Naruto was staring at the man with wide eyes before he turned to Alex and asked, what can you do? Alex held out an arm which then rippled in biomass. Then his upper armed arm became more muscular, and his hand elongated, and instead of 5 fingers were 3 extended blade-like fingers and a similar shorter thumb. Sugh, the blonde said amazed. But how are you going to teach me that? Alex answered by placing his hand on the blonde's head. What are you? Alex looked at him. I'm going to infect you with a virus. The same one gave me my powers. The blonde gulped at being infected with some strange virus. Nothing bad will happen to me, right? Naruto asked the man nervously. Alex put his hand to his chin and answered. Well, there is the fact that you may have to consume other beings to heal yourself like I do if I take a lot of damage. Naruto may have been young, but he knew what consume meant. You ate people? The boy yelled. It was out of necessity, Alex said. Besides, you probably won't need that since you already have your own excelled healing powers. The blonde was quiet and yelled, You ate people. Bam! Itai! Kagome glared at the two and growled, Stop yelling. Time skip, 8 years. The scene opens to reveal a 13-year-old blonde. The boy wore a black shirt with a pair of long black jeans and a belt that had a red skull on the buckle. He wore a pair of black combat boots and a red cloak over all that hiding his arms, and a pair of cylinder-shaped objects on his belt. The blonde was sitting in a meditative state with his eyes closed. As the blonde opened his eyes, revealing a pair of ice-cold cobalt blue orbs with slit pupils, the blonde rose up and sighed. So far the last 8 years had been hell. Alex Mercer got to train him first. It started with Mercer infecting him with the black light virus. After about a half hour of pain as the virus settled, Naruto started learning to control his enhanced strength and speed. It wasn't really hard to do once he had to fight Mercer, who was much stronger than him obviously. The only fortunate thing was that Naruto grew stronger with each time he survived the fights. Alex taught Naruto how to sneak and assassinate. That was made easy since there were a few bandits came through and set up camps, giving the blonde some on-the-job practice. The blonde gained the claw, whip fist, hammer fist, muscle mass, blade, shield, armor, and heat vision abilities. He also gained a new power, tendrils. Through practice, Naruto found he could tie people up with the tendrils, or set up traps and have the tendrils tear them apart. He also found that he could infect a person with the tendrils and make the target shot tendrils out of him and pull everything that was nearby towards him. Alex said that was a power used by a man named Sergeant James Heller, the guy who killed him. Next came Kagome. Her training wasn't any easier. The woman was a complete and total slave driver. She taught him a lot of techniques and made him repeat them until he almost ran out of chakra. At that time she would give him a soldier pill and make him do a different one. She also made him run 50 laps with 50 pounds on each leg. Despite the fact that the training was hell, there was method to the madness. Using so much chakra at once allowed the blonde's chakra reserves to grow. This made his chakra control incredible and allowed him to increase his already monstrous strength. She also taught him a few demon techniques like Foxfire and the Yuki Whip among other techniques. The last few years of training came from Starkiller. He was the last to train because the elemental nations didn't have the technology to make them. Kyuubi told him that Yuki no Kuni, Snow Country, had been going through some technical advancements. The Force user then set out for Yuki no Kuni. Around the time he returned, Naruto finished his training with Kagome. Starkiller's training as brutal as Naruto's other torturers/trainers. Starkiller basically taught Naruto strategy and force techniques such as the Force Push, Force Lightning, Mind Trick, Saber Throw, and Force Pulse. He even taught he blonde how to protect his own mind in case he ever encountered psychics or something like that. The blonde was brought out of his musings when he felt 4 presences behind him. The blonde turned to see Kagome, Alex, Starkiller, and Sora of all people. Glad to see you, Shinigami Dano, Naruto said, bowing politely. One lesson that Kagome beat into him was etiquette. She also managed to get the bye from boasting so much with a few hard bashes to the skull. It took a lot of lumps and Tylenol to get him to stop being loud, eccentric, and obviously obnoxious. Please, Sora said, just call me Sora. I hate formalities. Naruto smirked. Okay, Sora Dano. Sora gained a sweat drop while the other 3 tried not to laugh. So what brings you here, Sora? Naruto asked the woman. Naruto, as much as I know you've grown attached to Alex and Starkiller, Shinigami said, it's time they returned to the realm of the dead. The blonde looked at her and nodded sadly. The boy had grown attached to them. He had even grown to call the two Aniki, elder brother. See you around, kid, Alex said, placing a hand on the blonde's shoulder. As much as I don't like to admit it, it's been fun. Sora opened a portal to the realm of the dead and walked in. Alex followed after her. Starkiller turned to Naruto and said, May the Force be with you, young Padawan. Naruto smiled at his Aniki and bowed. With that, Starkiller turned and left. The blonde wiped his eyes of the tears that were threatening to spill. Kagome wrapped her arms around him and held him for a few moments, trying to soothe the sad boy. So Naruto, Kagome asked, what are you going to do now? The blonde dried the last of his tears and said, I guess I'll start my own clan somewhere. Truth be told, I don't think that Konoha will ever accept me for who or what I am. Kagome grinned. She was hoping the boy wouldn't go back to that hellhole. So are you going to take your father's name? The vixen asked. No, Naruto said, I have new bloodlines and I'll start a new clan with them. Kagome smiled at him again and asked, what are the bloodlines in your clan name? Naruto was quiet for a second as he thought, I'll call my black light abilities the Kuro Shinka Kekii Genkai, Dark Evolution Bloodline Limit, and my force powers the Chikaraten Kekkei Genkai, Force Release Bloodline Limit. My new name Naruto Uzumaki Fukyu Eternal. Eternal huh? Kagome asked as if trying out the sound. I like it. The two stood there for a minute before Naruto asked, what do we do now? Kagome looked out and said, let's get something to eat, I'm starving. Chapter 2 Monster and Wave. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed as he finished his paperwork. It had been a long 8 years. Mostly because it had been boring. The old man missed Naruto causing havoc every few days. Plus he had no distractions from his paperwork. After telling the council that Naruto had gone missing from the hospital, the civilian council went into an uproar. There were demands left and right about how they should hunt down the demon and have it killed. The old Kage quickly squashed that idea. The civilian council tired to argue that he could be a dangerous enemy. The old man said that it was their fault that Naruto was gone. That if he did come back for revenge it would be their fault and for they had created the monster that would eventually kill them. They begged the old man try and send out Hunter Nin to try and find a boy to bring him back. But the old man didn't, saying he would not waste his ninja's time and energy on catching a boy that the council would try to get under their thumb and only wind up making things worse. Meanwhile at Naruto's house, Naruto opened the cabinet and groaned. We're out of food already? The blonde asked surprised. I thought we bought some just last week. Kagome, who was sitting at the table, said yeah, but there was the little party I threw you after you finished your training. Naruto raised an eyebrow and thought, oh yeah. That was fun. Kagome gave Naruto a serious look and said, kid, we don't have any money. We can't buy any more food. What are we supposed to do? Naruto was quiet. Naruto then snapped his fingers as an idea hit him. I heard that there's a town a few miles from here, Naruto said. I guess I could try and find some work there. Kagome smiled and said, I'll go with you, kid. You may know how to fight, but you don't know much about business. The blonde nodded at that. He may have been trained in ninja, military, and Jedi/Sith ways, but he had yet to know anything about business or politics. The two packed up and sprinted for the town. About an hour later, when Naruto and Kagome entered the town, they were surprised that this place looked in pretty bad shape. The town was pretty messed up. People were living in shacks. Some people were even living in what looked like alleys. What the hell happened here? The blonde asked as he saw the poverty around him. The two explored the town a bit more until they came across a large bridge. One that was apparently going off toward the mainland or something like that. The two walked onto the bridge here and found that there was an old man in a hard hat arguing with a worker. What do you mean you quit? The old man yelled. I'm sorry, Tazuna, the worker said. I know we've been friends for a long time, but I can't do this anymore. Tazuna scowled at the man. Fine, quit if you want to. We'll finish the bridge with or without your help. The worker dropped his hard hat on the ground and then walked past the Naruto and Kagome without so much as a second glance. Naruto and Kagome then approached the bridge builder. Excuse me, Naruto said as he tapped on Tazuna's shoulder. The old man turned around to see the boy and the girl standing behind him. What do you want, kid? The old man asked in a slightly impatient voice. I'm kind of looking for a job, Naruto said. Since you look a little short of hands at the time, I figured I could work here for a while. Tazuna looked the kid over. The kid had some muscle, meaning he was strong. He was young, but he looked like he could hold his own for a while. Do you actually know how to work in construction? Tazuna asked him with a raised eyebrow. I helped build a little bit, if that's what you mean, Naruto said. It wasn't a total lie. When Starkiller had given him his lightsabers, he had Naruto take it apart, and then put it back together. All in all, it was a very time-consuming and irritating process. Tazuna smiled and said, Okay kid, get a hard hat and get to work. You can start by helping break down some of the cement so that we can use it in the concrete. Naruto nodded before going off and grabbing a hard hat. As the blonde ran off, Tazuna turned to Kagome. So girl, the old man said, what are you doing with a kid like that? You his sister or something? Kagome smiled and said, you might say that. He's a good friend of mine. The old man nodded and said, well, you better get going. Having a pretty lady like you around is going to distract the workers or get some unwanted attention. The woman nodded and then left. While Naruto spent his time working, Kagome went around the village. She was saddened by the sight of all the poverty around them. She looked to see that the market was low on food. What the heck happened to this town? She thought as she walked through the street. As she walked, she was aware of the looks she was getting from the men. If only they knew that she was a demon queen who would sooner crush them like insects than date them. As she was thinking, she felt a pull on the back of her kimono around her backside. She was about to turn around and yell out pervert when she noticed that the alleged pervert was actually just a little kid. She smirked, reached into a bag she pulled out of nowhere, and gave the kid an apple. The kid smiled, revealing she was missing one of her front teeth. Back at the bridge, Naruto was working when he noticed something. Tazuna looked nervous as if he was looking out for something. Hey big guy, Naruto said to the worker next to him, what's up with the boss? He looks a little jumpy. The worker looked at Naruto and said, listen kid. There's this guy named Gato who runs the shipping industry. Since he rolled in his blood this place dry. That's why everything looks so bad. Boss wants to build this bridge so we don't need him around anymore. Naruto nodded and said, let me guess? Gato doesn't want that. The man shook his head and replied, no. Gato hired these missing nin to help kill the boss. I don't think we should worry though. The boss hired these ninja from Konoha to help him out. The blonde froze, making the worker look at him strangely. Hey kid, you okay? Naruto shook his head and said, I'm fine. Just some really bad memories. The man nodded. After a few hours of working, it was time to close up for the night. As everyone left, Naruto noticed a man with gravity-defying silver hair. Naruto recognized him as one of the ANBU who was supposed to protect him when he was little, but let the villagers hurt him. The blonde did his best to blend in with the crowd. Luckily, the man was too engrossed in his book to notice the blonde. After making sure he was out of the man's sight, Naruto made a dash around the village to try and find Kagome. He found her on the edge of the town. Naruto, what's wrong? She asked as Naruto approached her with a nervous look. Konoha ninja, Naruto panted, they're in the village protecting the bridge builder, my boss. Kagome knew that Naruto didn't particularly like Konoha for what they did to his family. What are you gonna do? Kome asked. I can't believe I'm saying this, Naruto said, but I think I'll keep working here. Kami knows we need the money. Kagome nodded at him. With that, they went home hoping that they didn't get caught by the Konoha nin. It continued like this for about a week. Naruto would come to the bridge and work, but he stayed under the radar of the Konoha nin. While Naruto worked, he made sure to keep an eye out for how many there were. So far he had counted 4. There was that silver-haired guy who always left him for dead. He also saw one of them was a pink-haired girl, a guy with red tattoos on his face and a puppy, and some guy with a hairdo that looked like it was modeled after a duck's butt. Naruto was currently walking to the bridge. The young blonde had just arrived when a thick mist rolled in. What the hell is this? Naruto asked out loud as he could actually feel chakra in the mist. Lungs, heart, brain, kidneys, jugular, spine. So many targets, so little time, a voice echoed through the mist. As the last word echoed out, there was a huge blast of killing intent that sent most of the workers to their knees. Then one of the workers who hadn't fainted fell down in a shower of blood. Then another and another. Naruto felt a presence through the force coming at him. The blonde quickly moved to the right to avoid getting sliced. The blonde then sent out a wave of chakra that blew away some of the mist. With the mist cleared, he could see his enemy. The assailant was a tall man with spiky a black muscle shirt, cowhide pants, fabric wrapped around his arms, a mask that covered his mouth, and a huge cleaver-like sword. So a kid is able to withstand my killing intent and blow away the mist, the man said with a tone of curiosity. The man then looked over the boy and said, too young to be a retired shinobi, and this isn't a ninja village. Who are you? The blonde crossed his arms and said, I don't think that's any of your business, old man. Zabuza chuckled and said, you know what they say about boys with big mouths. They're always the first to die. Naruto smirked at him and said, and I bet you know what they say about guys with big swords. Zabuza scowled at the boy while a feminine giggle sounded. Naruto turned around to see a figure in a blue kimono wearing a hunter nin mask. While Naruto's back was turned, the man from before hefted his sword before swinging it. The blonde then vanished in a sudden blur, making the man and his assistant gasp. The two looked around each other for him when a voice sounded. Force release, force bullet. The man was then knocked backwards by an unseen force. The man caught himself and clutched his chest in pain. He then glared as he saw the boy he was about to cut open. He glared at him, trying to keep an image up, but inside he was nervous. Force release? He thought, I've never heard of that. Does this kid have some sort of bloodline? The man then chuckled and said, I got to say you got some skills, kid. What's your name? Naruto crossed his arms and said, Naruto Uzumaki Fukyu. Who are you supposed to be? The man hefted his sword onto his shoulder and said, Zabuza Momochi, former ninja of Kirigakure and former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Naruto cracked his neck and got into a fighting stance. Zabuza turned to the other figure and said, Haku, stay back. I want to fight this guy alone. Zabuza then charged at Naruto, swinging his sword. He was surprised when Naruto was able to dodge each of his swings with surprising agility. After about a dozen misses, he growled in annoyance and yelled, Stay still so I can kill you. The blonde then surprised Zabuza by staying still and then catching the cleaver before it could reach him. You gotta do better than that, Zabu-chan, the blonde said with a cheeky smirk. Haku laughed a bit again, and Zabuza had a red face in embarrassment, and anger, and steam was coming out of his ears. The former Kiri ninja then pulled his sword of Naruto's grip, succeeding in cutting his hand. Naruto put up an act and clutched his cut hand. Zabuza then charged at the blonde whose hand had just finished healing. The blonde then dodged to the right. As he dodged, the biomass in his arms formed large claws. The blonde then swung at Zabuza, who jumped back just in time to avoid getting diced, but now had 3 long cuts on his chest. Naruto flexed his claws and said, Now the real fun begins. Meanwhile, at the edge of the unfinished bridge, Tazuna had just arrived with the Konoha nin he hired to find most of his workers dead. What the hell? The man asked. What's going on? One of the workers, who was still just barely alive, said, Boss, Miss Demon, run. With that, the silver-haired man said, Sakura, you stay here and protect Tazuna. Kiba, Sasuke, you're with me. I'm sensing more than Zabuza and that fake hunter nin in there. Sasuke, the boy with the duck butt hairstyle, smirked, while Kiba, the guy with the dog, gained a feral grin. Sakura, the pink-haired girl, stood in front of the Tazuna with a kunai in her hand. The 3 men then ran into the mist with the intent of fighting their enemies. Back with Naruto. Naruto swung his claws again, making contact with Zabuza's sword with a loud clang. The two had a grappling match for a few seconds before shoving away from each other, glaring at each other. Damn, this kid is good, Zabuza thought bitterly. If he had been born years ago, he would have been a great asset to Kiri and helped up kill that Team Yagura. Unknown to him, Naruto heard his thought through his force powers. Who's Yagura? The blonde thought. At that moment the young force user felt the 5 new presences, one of which he recognized as the boss. The other 4 were the Konoha ninja Tazuna hired. He felt that the pink-haired one was back with Tazuna while Silver Hair, Dog Boy, and Duck Butt were on their way. The blonde didn't have time to think of a plan as the 2 genin and jonin entered the slightly less misty area. What the heck? Kiba asked. Who the hell is this guy? Zabuza growled. Kakashi Hatake. If you don't mind, I'm a little busy with a little nuisance here. Naruto chuckled and said, I really doubt a little nuisance would be able to cut your chest and hurt you, Zabu-chan. Zabuza glared white-hot at the boy while Kakashi chuckled at the blonde. Sasuke gained a slight smirk and Kiba just let out a boisterous laugh. I don't know who this guy is, but I like him already, Kiba laughed. Zabuza growled at being humiliated by a kid. He charged again thinking he could catch Naruto off guard. He was sorely mistaken. The blonde dodged the blade before knocking the large sword out of his hands and then grabbing him by the shirt and lifting him off the ground, and then slamming him on the ground leaving a Zabuza-shaped imprint. Zabuza-sama, Haku yelled out, then she flew at the blonde forming needles in her hands and called out, Ice release, ice needle shower. Haku then unleashed a barrage of needles that turned the blonde into a pincushion. I got her! Kiba yelled as he charged. He himself wound up getting turned into a pincushion himself along with his dog. Haku then went through hand signs and said ice release, demon ACK. She was cut off when she found herself being choked by some unseen force. She turned her head painfully to see Naruto with his hand extended. The blonde then waved his hand in front of him and said sleep. Haku felt her mind to black and then fell to the ground unconscious. Who are you supposed to be? Sasuke asked as he eyed the guy. He was wondering how he was able to take out his brother in no time. I don't think that's any of your business, boy, Naruto said, glaring at the Uchiha heir. I demand you tell me who you are, Sasuke growled. Naruto would have sighed something when he felt a great deal of people approaching. The blonde toon turned toward the direction and said, we have unwanted guests. At that moment a small, old, pudgy little midget came out of the now thing mist followed by a bunch of bandits and mercenaries. Well, the midget said, the bloody demon of the mist is actually the little puppy of the mist. That would explain how he was beaten by a kid. Good thing I didn't plan on paying him anyway. Now I can pay that little bitch back for breaking my hand. Alright boys, tear the village apart, and bring back any valuables and women you find. I've been in need of some new entertainment. The mercenaries charged forward. Of course at the moment they were oblivious to Naruto's thoughts. The blonde had been given the talk by Kagome a good few years ago. He had also found women in the bandit camps that had been abused, and the very thought of rape sickened him. The blonde was releasing a subtle killing intent that only the ninjas near him could sense. Then as the bandits neared he let it all out. Force release, force pulse. Naruto floated in the air, and then unleashed a huge wave of force energy around him. The blast actually disintegrated a few of the bandits that were closest to him, and knocked back the others who were not as close were sent flying off the bridge. Gato! The blonde roared, making the old man gulp nervously. Today you die. The blonde's left arm was covered in tendrils and then shifted to a large black and serrated blade. The blonde then charged into the crowd and started swinging like a madman. Every few seconds a mercenary would wind up getting either split at the waist or straight down the middle. The blonde continued this onslaught until he was in the middle of the mercenary crowd. The blonde then focused his biomass and yelled out, Devastator, tendril burst. The biomass on the blonde's back distorted and then shot out as multiple tendrils ripped through the mercenaries and bandits like paper. Although while everyone was watching with multiple reactions, Kakashi was staring with his only visible eye widened. He was currently hoping that this guy was never his opponent anytime soon. Kiba was watching in horror, as he saw someone his own age slice through human being like a merciless killing machine. That and the smell of all the blood was killing his nose. Akamaru made a huge wet spot on the bridge. Sasuke was staring in shock as terrible memories of his clan's massacre played before his eyes. He actually felt a pang in his heart as he saw his father's bodies fall to the ground as his brother, Itachi, pulled his sword out of their father's chest. Sakura was currently torn between peeing herself, taking a dump in her pants, and throwing up. She then settled for doing all three with 2 large stains forming in her pants, and then losing consciousness in a pile of her own vomit. Tazuna, well, he now had a deep fear of ninjas, or whatever this kid was. Zabuza, who had woken up from getting his head slammed into concrete, was watching in shock. He wished he could join in on the carnage, but right now he was a little too out of it due to his head injury and possible concussion. Haku, who also recently woke up, was watching in shock. Despite the carnage, she got a look at Naruto. The savage and feral look on his face caused her to blush. She was slightly worried why she was getting heated to the sight of a massacre happening in front of her. Apparently Zabuza was rubbing off on her. It was at the moment that Kagome arrived, sensing the massive outputs of chakra. She saw the slaughter and felt blood rush to her cheeks. She may have been nicer than the legend said, but seeing an onslaught like this really seemed to get her motor going. She was hoping that she was able to control herself before she did something embarrassing. After a lot of bloodshed and screaming, all that was left was Gato at the end of the bridge. The old man was currently shaking like a leaf. Naruto walked up to him, fists balled. The old man fell backwards as the boy approached him. The blonde glared at the man and then turned around. Hey, aren't you going to kill me? Gato asked. The blonde looked back at him and said, you aren't worth killing, you old pile of puke. Naruto was about to walk away before he felt something pierce his back. Behind him stood Gato with a sword he pulled out of his cane. The old man had a smirk before he realized Naruto hadn't slumped over. He looked up to see the blonde had turned back to look at him with a look of pure anger. I gave you a chance to live, little man, Naruto said. Now it's payback time, short stack. Naruto spun around before his arm morphed into a hammer fist, and then brought it down on the man's skull, crushing him like an insect. Then he discreetly consumed Gato into his body. The blonde then turned around and noticed the massacre around him and said, dang, my teachers turned me into a sadist and a bloodthirsty fighter. What better way to survive in this world? Zabuza then approached Naruto and said, hey kid. The blonde faced him and said, yeah, Mr. No Eyebrows. Zabuza gained a tick mark and said, ignoring that. Listen, there's something in Kiri that needs to be taken care of. Since you're strong, I figured you could help us out with that. The blonde looked at the man skeptically and said, what exactly is the problem? Zabuza then whispered it into his ear. The blonde then looked at him and nodded. Haku, Zabuza called to his companion, we're heading home. We got some business to take care of. At that, Kakashi stepped up. Not so fast, the silver-haired Jonin said, your friend and the demon are coming with us. Naruto glared at the Kakashi and said, back off, dog boy, or else I'll make what I did here look like a paper cut compared to what I'll do to you. Kakashi crossed his arms. I don't think so. You're coming back to Konoha, Naruto. Naruto scoffed and said, why, so I can be molded into Konoha's weapon, and have my secrets spilled before a corrupt council. By the way, give the old man a message. First, tell him I said hi, and two, if he sends any ANBU or any other ninja after me, I'll be sending them back in a box. While Naruto spoke, he was releasing killing intent that made Kakashi and everyone else around who could feel it nervous. See you later, suckers, the blonde said as he grabbed Zabuza and Haku, and then vanished. Sensei, Kiba asked, was? Kakashi gulped and said, yes, it was. I don't know what happened to him over the years, but he's our enemy now. Remember that, otherwise you might not live to see another day. With that, Kakashi left. These were the rest of Team 7's thoughts as Kakashi left. Sasuke, what power? What was that? Next time I see him, I'll make him tell me where he got such power. Sakura, my Kami, that was Naruto. My mom was right, he is a monster if he would slaughter so many people mercilessly. Kiba, so that's what happened to my old prank buddy. He sure has changed. I wonder what made him think that. Akamaru, that was the guy Master met at the park? Wow, who knew he would become such an alpha? I hope Master doesn't do anything stupid. Later at Naruto's house, Kagome was currently wrapping Zabuza's chest from the claw marks he took from Naruto. Said blonde looked at the swordsman and said, so you need me to help you out with killing the Sandaime Mizuki Chigura? The swordsman nodded and said, I know it sounds crazy, but there is a good reason for it. The blonde motioned for him to continue. The Sandaime started a bloodline holocaust that led to the death of a lot of people. Zabuza explained, the sooner he dies, the sooner people can enjoy life again in Kiri. Naruto looked at him and said, you're lucky I have a good guy complex. I'll help you. Now we'll have to do this tomorrow, okay? I'm tired from the bloodbath earlier. Zabuza and Haku nodded before heading up to their rooms to sleep. Naruto turned out the lights and headed up to his room when Kagome stopped him. What's up, Kagome? The blonde asked. She had her hair hung so he couldn't see her face. After a moment she rose her head, allowing Naruto to see her eyes. The next thing Naruto knew, the woman was practically sucking his soul out through his mouth. She separated with a wet pop and then threw him into her room before turning to the door and running her finger around the front of the door. She then entered the room and slammed it shut, followed by the sound of a lock clicking. On the door was burned, do not disturb. Do so and you will die. Chapter 3, Monster in the Mist. Naruto, Kagome, Haku and Zabuza were currently heading for Kiri. Since breakfast there had been a long awkward silence over the group. Mostly because of Naruto and Kagome's activities the night before. At breakfast Naruto would nervously shift his eyes to the woman, and Kagome's eyes were staring at him dreamily at him. Haku would stare at Kagome jealously, while Zabuza would grin in pride at the kid getting such a hot woman. So what can expect from the bloodline rebels? Naruto asked Zabuza, try and get rid of the awkward silence. Well, Zabuza said, I'm not really sure. It's been so long since I've been there, I'm not really sure what to expect. From what I've heard, the rebels aren't doing so well. I can tell you that Yagura does use a lot of water jutsu and a little bit of lightning jutsu as well. Naruto rubbed his chin in thought. Suiton and Raiton, Naruto thought, that could be a very dangerous combination if he combines the two. I'm going to have to be careful. He was brought out of his thoughts as Kagome tapped his shoulder. Naruto-kun, she whispered, if he does have such control over water, I think he might be holding the sandbai. Naruto looked at her before saying, was the sandbai always crazy like this or? Kagome shook her head and said, no. Nami was a calm and gentle creature. She didn't even like fighting that much. If she could, she'd avoid conflict altogether. Naruto turned away from her as he rubbed his chin and asked, do you think that she or Yagura are being controlled by some outside force? Kagome thought for a minute before shrugging her shoulders. It might be that, she said, or the seal on Yagura could be faulty. If the seal is done sloppily, it can have effects on the bijou or the jinchuriki. The rest of the distance to Kiri was mostly quiet. Eventually they hit an area that had a very thick mist. Naruto glanced at Zabuza suspiciously when they entered, but eventually they came across the village. Before they entered the village, Zabuza sealed away his sword and then put on a jacket before pulling the hood up to cover his face. This way he wouldn't be recognized immediately. With that, the group of 4 entered the village. The 4 saw that the village was in worse shape than Wave. There were destroyed homes and many people were out on the streets. Naruto shook his head at the sight. The price of war was indeed very steep, especially when it was a civil war. As the group made their way to the center of the village, they noticed that they were being followed. The group slowly made their way to a less populated area, which happened to be a large training ground. As soon as they entered the field, they were surrounded by a bunch of ninja. So this is what Yagura has sent at us, the leader said. Well, let's send the back in boxes, MN. The rebels didn't speak, but they charged at 4 travelers. Hold on for a minute, Zabuza yelled, trying to get through to them, but they weren't listening. Naruto rolled his eyes and focused his force energy before saying, you guys are going to want to move. With that, the disguised Zabuza, Haku, and Kagome all moved a good distance from the blonde. The mist ninja closed in and Naruto roared, force release, force repulse. An unseen energy launched outwards from the blonde, taking the mist rebels by surprise and knocking a good portion of them away. The mist rebels closest to the blast felt their bones crack and were in incredible pain. Those that weren't very close were still in pain. Those that weren't even attacking at the time were shocked at the power they had just seen. Now are you going to try that again, or are you going to listen? The blonde asked in an annoyed tone. The leader approached the boy and asked, who sent you here? Naruto crossed his arms in annoyance and answered, a man who seeks to end the tyranny of a man. The man grinned slightly and said, come with us. If you so much as even try anything, you will die. Naruto followed the man and the rebels who could still move. The incapacitated ones were then picked up by their comrades and carried. After about a half hour of walking with the rebels, they arrived at an old bunker. Once inside, they saw that it was in fact an underground base. After going through a great deal of tunnels, they eventually made it to what Naruto believed to be the inner sanctum of the base. Inside was a red-headed woman listening to the advice of the people around her as to what to do next in the war. After a few minutes, the red-headed woman noticed their presence. Ichigo, the redhead said, raising her eyebrow, who are they? Ichigo, the leader who brought Naruto and company with him, stepped forward and said, we found them in the village Terumi-sama. We presumed them to agents of Yagura and tired to eliminate them. As we did, we found that one of them was in possession of a bloodline that was able to subdue most of my men in one shot. There were impressed looks from the group, but there were also murmurs of disbelief among the people in the room. Which one of them had this power? The redhead asked with a curious look in her eyes. That would be me, Naruto said, stepping forward. The woman looked the boy over a bit before snickering. As if a little gawky, like you could actually do something like that, she said with a smirk. Naruto's eyes narrowed and said, really? Well, I don't that an old lady like you could lead an army. At that, the room went quiet and temperature dropped a few degrees. The people who were close to the red-haired woman moved away. The woman rose up from her spot and marched over to the blonde, looking him square in the eyes. As she did, Naruto got a good look at her. She had a long flowing red hair, pale skin, and blue lipstick on her face. She had a well-curved body and a developed chest. She wore a long-lived dark blue dress that fell just below her knees that seemed to be closed at the front with a zipper. Under that she wore a mesh shirt. What did you say, Gaki? She hissed in a very low and dangerous tone. You heard me, Bachan, the blonde replied with a smirk. The rebels were currently nervous as they knew of their leader's temper when someone mocked her. Naruto's company were doing their best to keep from laughing. The rebel leader snarled loudly and growled, okay, Gaki. You want to play, you got it. We'll test your so-called strength against this old lady. The rebels were surprised at this. Normally she would try to avoid conflict, but apparently this kid had hit a sour note with her. Naruto grinned slightly and said, okay, Bachan. What do you say we make this interesting? If I win, you have to kiss me. If I lose, I become your personal servant for a month. The redhead grinned and said, you're on, boy. She held out her, and the two shook. The redhead walked away and looked back before saying, we'll fight in 3 hours. See you, the runt? Naruto shook his head and headed back to his group. Kid, Zabuza whispered, you have no idea what you just got yourself into. Naruto looked at the man and said, what do you mean? Zabuza looked at the boy seriously. She's a Terumi. Her family has been known to use either Yotan, lava release, or Futon, boil release. All in all, she's one tough chick. Naruto grinned slightly and said, good, that makes us even. I have 2 and she has 2. We're on even grounds. Zabuza shook his head slightly and said, just be careful when you fight her, okay? The last thing we need is for you to die so soon. Naruto nodded and left to go prepare for his fight with the Terumi woman. Meanwhile in Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi was not having a good afternoon. First he woke up with a backache, then his paperwork had skyrocketed. Then Kakashi got back and told him that Naruto was still alive. Though that was good, it quickly went back to being bad when Kakashi told him that Naruto said that he would send anyone Konoha sent after him back in a box. Because of this development, he had to call a council meeting. When they heard about it, there were multiple demands, most of which were for the blonde's head on a plate. Those who supported the blonde, however, said to just leave the boy be. If they didn't piss him off, they wouldn't have to worry about anything. The neutral party, they didn't really say anything. Kakashi, who was being forced to attend since he brought this up, stayed quiet as well. Enough! The elderly man roared, making everybody quiet down. Lord Hokage, a fat civilian, said, we implore you to send out Hunter Nien or Anbu. We have to kill the demon while we still have a chance. The elderly man sighed and said, I already told you I will not be sending any of our forces after him. From what Kakashi told me, the boy has grown much stronger over the years. Kakashi then added his 2 cents and said, there are also the matter of the abilities he displayed. This got the attention of everyone, and Koharu, one of the elders, asked, what abilities? Kakashi rubbed his chin and said, well, first he displayed a power that allowed him to fight using some invisible force. I believe he called it Chikaraton, force release. Then he showed the ability to shift his flesh. Basically, he morphed his hands into huge claws that were able to slice through multiple bandits. In addition, he took a sword through the chest and survived. I'm not sure, but I believe he also managed to absorb a man's body into his own. On top of all that, he was able to unleash multiple tentacle-like extremities from his body that were able to wipe out a great deal of fighters. Upon that being heard, that were demands that Naruto be brought back and be used a breeding factory so that they could acquire the abilities he showed. I'm getting tired of repeating myself, Hiruzen sighed, but I am not sending anyone after Naruto just so he can be used as a breeding factory. I really doubt he would come back if he knew that was his fate. At that moment a civilian did something very stupid. Come on, Hokage-sama. If we have to deal with that goddamn monster, we might as well get something beneficial out of it. I swear you are too soft. I'd say I'd be better off leading this village than you. Silence. Then a huge blast of killing intent filled the room. The temperature dropped and the civilian found himself lifted off the ground by a very old and very angry man. Listen now, civilian, Hiruzen spat, and this goes for the rest of you. You apparently forget that this is not a democracy, it is a dictatorship. I'm the Hokage and my word is law. Understood? The civilians all nodded fearfully. The shinobi council members and the hidden ANBU were all glad to see their leader finally asserting his authority. Good, Hiruzen said, now if there is nothing else to be discussed, this meeting is adjourned. Now get out before I lose my patience. With that the council left. When they were gone, the Hokage groaned and said, I swear if it weren't for the fact that this was one of the few ways to keep tabs on the civilians, I'd have barbecued the civilian council by now. Back in Kiri, Naruto followed the rebels who were leading him downwards until they reached large underground arena. It was basically an underground cave that was been carved out by earth jutsu most likely. In said arena stood the red-headed Torimi, who had a grin on her face. Next to her was an old man in striped clothes with light blue hair, skyward pointing hair, and an eye patch. I can't believe we're doing this, the man with the patch said. In my day we didn't have to fight each other just to prove a point. The reed-head turned to the man and smiled while saying, Ao, shut up or I'll kill you. The now identified Ao gulped before backing away. Naruto entered the arena with his cloak fluttering. Which in a sense is weird because there was no breeze down there. He approached the rebel leader and said, you know I never did get your name. The redhead smirked before answering, my name is Mei Torimi. You. The blonde cracked his knuckles and said, Naruto Uzumaki Fukyu. Mei grinned at the boy and said, hope you're ready, Naruto, because I'm going to melt that grin right off your face. Naruto got into a stance and said, bring it on, Granny. Ao looked between the two and said, are you ready? Hajime. Naruto was the first to react and said, fire release. Great fireball. The blonde launched a huge fireball from his maw that Mei was able to dodge. Is that all you got, little boy? Mei taunted as she went through hand signs. Lava release. Lava globs. Mei launched globs of lava from her mouth. So she's a Yotan user, Naruto thought as he dodged the globs of melted earth. Let's see what else she can do. Naruto focused and yelled, force release, force bullet. An invisible force focused in the blonde's hands and shot it forward. Mei, caught off guard, was hit in the chest and knocked back. She clutched her chest and groaned. That was interesting, she said in between coughs. Oh, Naruto said in fake sympathy, was I too rough? Did Granny get a boo-boo? Haku, Zabuza, and Kagome couldn't help but laugh at the blonde's antics. Mei was red-faced as she heard Naruto talking to her like that. She growled and said, that's it, kid. I was going to just rough you up a little bit. Now I'm going to melt your balls off. The enraged redhead launched herself at the blonde, who jumped in the air to avoid her charge. Mei missed and then went through hand signs. Lava release, melting apparition. Mei took a deep breath before she launched a huge blast of lava from her mouth that spread into a broad thin sheet. Naruto's eyes widened and acted quick. Force release, lightning shield. Lightning focused around the blonde, forming a circular shield. The lava flowed around the shield before it came crashing down on the arena floor. The result of lava landing was a huge blast of steam. I get it now, Mei thought. This kid a mid to long range fighter. Let's see how he likes it when I get up close and personal. Mei then charged into the stream to confront the blonde. On the arena's side of the rebels chuckled and said, that sprat's going down. Haku looked at him and said, explain. The rebel turned to her and said, that kid is obviously a ranged fighter since all of his attacks were from a distance. Now that she's getting up close and personal, he's going down. Kagome smirked and said, wait for it. Then out of the steam Mei was launched, catching herself by digging her heels into the ground. The steam cleared, showing the blonde, who didn't look too happy. That was a dirty trick, Naruto said, coming at me when I couldn't see. Mei Mir looked at the boy in surprise before the young blonde launched himself at her. Mei dodged a left hook and caught a right jab aimed at her face. She then jumped back to avoid a knee aimed at her gut. She then charged forward and nailed Naruto in the stomach, making him double over. Mei then swung out a leg, knocking the blonde into the side of the cave before going through hand signs. Lava release, lava river. Mei fired a concentrated blast of lava from her mouth. The blast hit the hole that Naruto was in. Mei then went through a few more hand signs and said boil release, scalding water bullets. The woman then shot multiple balls of scalding hot water from her mouth. The balls of water struck the wall, and steam, a hissing noise was heard. Haku and Zabzo were wide-eyed. Kagome just had a knowing smirk. She decided not to ruin her surprise. Mia grinned slightly as she turned from the flaming and now melting hole in the wall when a voice said, "Oh, Mei, back in." Mei spun around just in time to see something come out of the wall. It was a tall human-shaped thing. Its body was completely black and its body seemed to be shaped after muscle. Its face was completely blank except for one completely red eye that looked right at her. Mei blanched as she saw the thing. Her eyes widened in shock when black and red tendrils spread over the thing's body. When they faded, it showed Naruto. His clothes were slightly singed, but other than that he was fine. So, the blonde said, Yotan and Futen, huh? This just gets better and better. Now it's my turn to play. Naruto then sprinted at the shocked Mei with his hands turning into large claws. Mei dodged the claws, but was unprepared for the blonde to suddenly flip over her, and then launch himself foot forward and nail her in the back. She was then grabbed and thrown into the wall. Mei looked up to see the blonde charging at her again. Mei closed her eyes, feeling her death was upon her. The blow never came. She opened her eyes just in time to feel a pair of lips being gently placed over hers. Mei's eyes widened and then closed them as she started leaning into the gentle kiss. Haku and Kagome looked on, both of them a bit jealous. Zabzo was mentally rooting for the kid. The rebels stared slack-jawed, but were also harboring feelings of jealousy. Naruto held on for a few more seconds before breaking away. I win, he said, smiling at the blushing woman. A while later, Naruto and company stood in front of Mei and her generals in the main area. Now Naruto, Mei said, I have to admit you are stronger than I thought and we would appreciate your help, but what can your friends contribute? Well, Naruto said, Kagome here is able to perform high-level fire jutsu and has incredible stamina. Haku has a Kekai Genkai herself that allows her to use Hayatan, and Mr. No Eyebrows over there is pretty good with the sword. Isn't that right, Zabuz-chan? Everyone chuckled at that, then realized what the blonde said before staring at the man. The man then removed his hood, showing his face. Zabuza, Mei said, been a while? I haven't seen you since you tried to kill Yagura. Zabuza shrugged and said, hey, just because I left doesn't mean I'm going to let some nutball run this village into the ground just because he's paranoid. Mei giggled at that before addressing Naruto. You know, kid, I got to ask. What kind of Kekai Genkai do you have? Naruto chuckled and said, well, I have two actually, Chikaraten and the Kuro Shinka Kekai Genkai. Dark Evolution Bloodline Limit. That spiked everyone's interest. I've never heard of those before, Mei said, mind explaining? Naruto shook his head before saying, the Kuro Shinka causes the user body to go into a constant state of evolution. In other words, what doesn't kill me literally makes me stronger. An example of which is my armored state. Kagome, while she trained me, always threw fire jutsu at me. As a result, my armor form is completely fireproof. My bloodline also allows me to shift my biomass into multiple forms. To demonstrate, his arms shifted to the claws form before he continued. I have other forms that I'd show you right now, but don't really have the time. Chikaraten allows me to take the energy around me and use it. I'm able to focus this energy and launch it, use it to form shields and other things. Mei rubbed her chin and said, so basically your abilities are a major power-up. Cool. Naruto nodded at her. Now then, I think I'm going to head to bed. The redhead nodded and called, Chojuro. A boy with glasses and a large sword on his back approached. Yes? He asked. Show Naruto and his friends to their quarters, Mei said, and get word to the troops. I think we've finally found our edge against Yagura. The boy nodded before leading the four away. With that, Mei and the generals all went to their quarters. As Mei sat on her bed, she held her fingers to her lips, which were still slightly tingling from the blonde's kiss from earlier. Naruto, she said to herself before giving a small smile. She then changed into her nightwear and turned off the light before going to bed. Chapter 4, End of the War. The following day, Naruto and company stood in front of the council and Mei. So we need a plan to take out Yagura, Mei said. Does anyone have any ideas? One of the advisors rose from his seat and said, I say we storm the stronghold and tear them apart. With Naruto here we can't fail. Naruto shook his head and said, though I am glad you have faith in my abilities, we can't just barge in guns blazing. Are you forgetting we are facing a Kage-level opponent plus his army? We need a plan. And I think I just might have one. Everyone looked at the boy with interest. What would that be? Mei asked. Naruto looked right at the redhead and asked, do you happen to have any prisoners? Specifically someone who would be close to Yagura? Later in the prison, Mei and Naruto stood in front of the cell that held a large muscular man with a scar on his left cheek. He also seemed to have multiple wounds. For what Naruto guessed, they had been trying to pull information out of him. That's Jason, Mei said. Before he was captured, he was one of Yagura's main generals. We've only kept him alive to give us information. Sadly, this guy is as tough as they come, and hasn't given us anything. Until now, of course, Naruto said with a grin. With that, he made his way into the cell. Soon, scream of pain and agony echoed through the prison. Later on, closer to Kiri, the two Kirinin yawned in boredom as they stood near the gate. Out of all the jobs in this village, this had to be the most boring one. They could be fighting off some of those bloodline freaks, but now they were stuck watching a stupid gate. I swear that guy rigged the straws so that we would get this job, guard number 1 said in a bored tone. I hear you, man, guard number 2 said with an equally bored tone. Let's face it, nothing ever happens around here. At that moment there was a rustling in the underbrush. The two guards stood at the ready. Then out of the foliage came a figure. Their eyes widened at the sight of a beaten, bloody, and very hurt Jason. Oh my Kami! Guard number 1 yelled, it's Jason. He turned to his subordinate and yelled, don't just stand there. We have to get him to a hospital now. Meanwhile in the Mizuki's office, Yugura was doing some paperwork when a ANBU wearing a shark mask burst through the door and yelled, Mizuki-sama. I have great news. Yugura looked up at him from his paperwork and said, what? Have the bloodline rebels surrendered? The ANBU answered, I wish. Anyway, Jason has returned. We found outside the moments ago. Yugura's head shot up and he said, tell them I'm on my way. I want to see this for myself. Later in the hospital, Yugura with a few ANBU guard walked through the halls of the hospital. They arrived at their destination, which was the room Jason had been assigned. Yugura opened the door to see a conscious Jason wearing a lot of bandages sitting up in his hospital bed. As Yugura entered the room, Jason took in the man's features. The man had messy gray hair, pale skin, pupil-less pink eyes, and a stitch-like scar ran all the way down from the bottom of his left eye to his cheek. He wore a gray sleeveless shirt with the Kirigakyo forehead protector on the front, short-sleeved mesh armor over which he wore a green poncho and a turquoise sash around his waist paired with a green apron over his pants. He also had a battle staff on his back that had a small hook on one side and a larger hook on the other. The larger hook side had a green flower on it. Jason, Yugura said with an emotionless voice, what a surprise. I thought you were dead. Jason scoffed and said, you know it would take more than a few bloodline rebels to take me down, Mizuki-sama. Yugura stepped forward and said, yes, but how do I know you're him? How do I know you aren't some bloodline rebel using his bloodline to masquerade as you? Jason rose up slightly from the bed and said, I am no fake Mizuki-sama. Ask me anything. Yugura rose an eyebrow and asked, when were you born? Jason answered, December 15, 1987. Yugura asked, why did the 7 swordsmen abandon the village? Jason answered, because they grew arrogant, started to seek work elsewhere. Yugura raised an eyebrow and asked, what is your wife's name? Jason answered with a sad voice, my wife has been dead for years. She died fighting in the bloodline rebels 3 years ago. Yugura nodded and said, it's him. Yugura turned to the nurse and said, keep an eye on him. Make sure he heals quickly. I want him debriefed as soon as possible. With that, the Mizuki left along with the NBU. Jason lay down and slept. Later on that night, as the moon rose high above the mist-covered land, there was movement in the undergrowth. If the trained ninja looked hard enough, you could see the slight glimmer of metal in the moonlight. In the underbrush, a lot of rebel soldiers waited for the right moment. Among them were Mei, Aoi, and Chojuro. Aoi turned to Mei and signed, are you sure that this is a good idea? Mei signed back, yes, Naruto knows what he is doing. Aoi signed, in my day we didn't rely on the plan of some gaki. The plans were made by adults. People who knew what they were doing. People who. Mei smiled sweetly as she signed, Aoi, shut up or I'll kill you. Back in the village, Yugura was brought out of his sleep by loud knocking. The Mizuki grumbled and rose up from bed. Being cautious, the man grabbed his staff before answering the door. Yugura gasped when he saw Jason at the door. On top of that, the man was in extreme pain. Jason, Jaeger asked as he grabbed his general, what is wrong? Jason turned to look at the Mizuki and said through gritted teeth, I'm sorry, Mizuki-sama, the bloodline rebels forced me to do this, forgive me. At that moment, black and red tendrils appeared and warped around the man's body as he screamed in agony. Mizuki-sama! An ANBU yelled as he burst through the door, what is? He stopped as he saw the pain Jason was in. Then the man roared in pain as biomass on his body started to ripple. Yugura had enough sense to get the heck out of there while he still had the chance. Good thing too, because just as soon as the man made it out of the Kage mansion, the entire place exploded in massive spikes of biomass. The ANBU inside never made it out. Yugura snarled as he reached for a seal on his staff and in a flash of chakra had on his combat outfit, the same clothes from earlier. Ninja of Kiri! The man yelled using chakra to enhance his voice, we are under attack. Arm yourselves. Outside the village, Mei smirked at the shout and yelled, okay boys, let's tear this mother down. The rebels shouted in agreement as they all charged toward the village. The Kiri ninja were caught off guard as they were struck down. Yugura jumped to the top of the building and growled as he saw the rebels attacking his village. His angry scowl then turned to a grin. This is good, the man said, I finally have a chance to take out those bloodline freaks once and for all. His grin got even wider when he saw that Mei was amongst the fighting. She's here, Yugura thought as his grin widened. I'll take her out first. When their leader falls, the rest will soon follow. At that moment, a new voice in the man's head yelled, you're going to have to get through me first, punk. Yugura cried out in pain as he was suddenly hit in the back with a vicious punch. Yugura was then grabbed, lifted up, had a knee slammed into his back, an elbow slammed into his face, and then kicked away. Yagura caught himself, and stared down his new opponent. Said opponent was a boy with blonde spiky hair wearing a red cloak that hid his arms from view. Who are you supposed to be? Yagura asked as he drew his staff. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Fukyu, the blonde answered, but you can refer to me as your death. Yagura smirked before getting into a stance and saying, we will see. The two charged at each other, with the rest of the rebels. Lava release, lava wave. Mei took a deep breath and unleashed a huge blast of lava from her mouth that spread out and melted down a few of the soldiers that were heading her way. You have to admit these guys react pretty fast, Zabuza yelled as he sliced through a Kiri soldier. Kagome and Haku were currently back to back. Kagome was shooting fireballs from her mouth while Haku was making use of the water in the air to make Senbon. Aoi was taking down opponents using taijutsu, and using a pair of kunai to take them down quickly. Chojuro was using his massive sword to beat down on enemies. Where do you think Naruto is? Haku asked Kagome as she sent an ice Senbon into a Kiri soldier's knee. I don't know, Kagome answered as she roasted a Kiri soldier. I can sense him though, and he's fighting back with Naruto and Yagura. Yagura swung his staff nearly taking off Naruto's head. The blonde ducked backwards to avoid the hooks and brought his leg up knocking Yagura away. Naruto then yelled, force release, force bullet. Jaguar was suddenly sent backwards by an invisible force. The man clutched his chest. As he rose his head up he became aware that Naruto was right on top of him. The blonde unleashed quick combo that Yagura was quick to catch. The pink-eyed demon Hodler responded with a punch to Naruto's stomach knocking the wind out of him then punched Naruto in the face knocking him away. Naruto caught himself, and caught his breath just in time to see Yagura going through hand signs. Water release, water cannon. Yagura fired a jet stream of water from his mouth. Naruto focused his force powers and just as the blast was about to reach him an invisible force knocked it away. Yagura narrowed his eyes and said, so you do have a bloodline. Naruto grinned and said, yep. Yagura scowled and said, all the more reason for me to kill you. Yagura went through more hand signs and water clone materialized next to him. The two then charged at Naruto. Naruto bobbed and weaved to avoid the combined kicks, punches, an occasional hook aimed at him from the two. The blonde jumped backwards to avoid getting slashed by a hook. As he did the real Yagura smirked. As Naruto landed the water clones started going through hand signs followed by the real one. Water release, great flood, lightning release, arc lightning. The water clone sent out a massive flood of water from his mouth that nearly flooded the whole street. The real Yagura fired a blast of lightning from both of his hands. The two attacks met, and the flood became electrified. Naruto paled as he saw the attack and acted fast by focusing a great amount of force energy into his hands. Force release, force cannon. The air around Naruto seemed to dull and gray bore he fire a huge blast of the force right at the oncoming attack. The result was the attack being blown apart followed by Yagura and his water clone being knocked off their feet. The water clones splashed against the ground turning back into water. Naruto took advantage of Yagura's disorientation and rushed forward. He caught Yagura's throat and dragged him across the ground before throwing the man into the wall. Naruto went through hand signs and yelled, fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Naruto fired a barrage of fireballs from his mouth into the building setting it ablaze and causing it to collapse. Naruto smirked as he looked out over the destroyed building. We're done here, Naruto thought. Just as the blonde turned a voice shouted out, lightning release, false darkness. Naruto spun around just in time to take a lightning bolt to the chest. The blonde was knocked off his feet and hit the ground hard. Duh, Naruto thought, he has a biju. I should have guessed that it wouldn't let him die so easily. The debris from the building was slowly moved away as a very burned and very angry Yagura walked out. His pink eyes now burning blue and full of hate. He growled, I will not lose to a bloodline using freak of nature. As the man yelled blue chakra covered him took the shape of a large turtle. The monster stood very tall with 3 large tails and massive head. Its large blue eyes glared balefully down at Naruto. Down boy, Naruto said with a nervous look on his face. With the others, everyone looked up from their fights to see Yagura in his tailed beast form. Oh no, Mei said. Don't worry, Kagome said. Naruto-kun can take care of himself. Back in the fight Yagura slammed his massive head down where Naruto had been standing. The blonde has made a quick rush before the turtle when its head rose. Naruto turned to the monster and yelled, force release, force lighting. The blonde shot a large bolt of blue lightning that flashed purple for a second before it struck the monster's head, making it scream out in pain. The monstrous turtle tore its head from the ground before it fired a torrent of water from its mouth. Naruto gasped before he jumped to the right to avoid getting washed away. He then found out that this thing was incredibly fast for its size as it suddenly spun around and struck Naruto with one of its tails. The blonde was sent flying into a wall shattering it. Before anyone could do anything else the monster turtle withdrew into its shell and fired off water from the hole in it, allowing it to fly. The turtle flew over to where Naruto was and dropped down. Dust and debris were kicked up everywhere. Everyone covered their eyes to avoid getting blinded by all the dust. At the moment everyone was taking a break to watch the fight between Naruto and Yagura. The turtle then rose up from the spot and started to laugh boisterously. The monster then turned to where Mei and the others were standing. It glared angrily down at Mei and the rest of the rebels. It started to stomp forward over to them. Mei and the rest of rebels were ready to fight to the death when a dark red glow started to emit from between the rocks. The giant turtle sensed it, and turned around just in time to see the rock all get blown away. When the smoke cleared, it revealed Naruto. The blonde's cloak was in tatters and he was missing the armor on his shoulder, and the entire right part of his shirt was torn off. What got everyone's attention though was the fact that Naruto was covered in a red cloak of chakra and his eyes were now crimson red. "You're a container too?" the monster said with shock, and a little bit of fear evident in its voice. "You got that right, pal," Naruto said. "Now let's see how you fare when I have you beat by 6 tails." Naruto pulled his lightsabers off his belt and activated the glowing blades. The blonde then charged at the oversized monster. The monster responded by shoot another jet stream of water from its mouth. Naruto vanished from sight before appearing again in front of one of the monster's legs. Force release, twin lightning blades. Naruto swung both his sword while focusing force lightning into them. The blades became incredibly long and glowed white as the lightning coursed through them. The blades tore through Yagura's front left leg, making the turtle scream in agony as it fell. Naruto quickly formed a pair of shadow clones. The first shadow clone ran to the right while the other went to the left. Both went through hand signs: force release, force gatling, demon release, black fire blast. The first shadow clone focused the force energy it had and fired a barrage of force bullets, each one making a resounding boom as they struck the turtle's shell, making it crack. After a lot of blasts, the shell broke. The second clone fired a huge blast of black flames. The fire singed the monster's left back leg. The monster fell to the ground with its 2 useless limbs giving out. The 2 clones vanished in puffs of smoke and the original Naruto ran at the turtle. The turtle's head snarled at the blonde. "Down, boy," Naruto growled. The head shot forward and attempted to chomp on the blonde. Naruto focused his biomass into his legs and jumped up high. Naruto focused his force lighting into his lightsabers again and yelled, "I said down." Both swords pierced the monster's head and shining dark purple shot down through the monster's skull and out through the jaw as the blades extended. The monster screamed in pain as the blades tore through its head. After a second the screaming stopped and the monster fell down completely. The blue chakra receded and in its place was Yagura. The man now had 2 massive scars running down his body and his back was completely mauled. On top of that, his left arm was missing and his right leg was severely burned. Naruto marched up to the downed Yagura, his eyes still burning a deep crimson. "Any last words?" Naruto asked the fallen demon host. "I regret nothing," was all Yagura said. Naruto then brought his foot up and stomped down on Yagura's chest, crashing his foot through the man's ribcage. After a second, black and red tendrils covered Yagura and absorbed the man's body into Naruto's being. Naruto's eyes turned back to normal. The blonde was bent over and breathing hard. He looked around to see the Kiri soldiers all laying down their weapons. "People of Kiri," the blonde yelled out, "this war is over." The blonde then started to sway and fell over. Just as he was about to hit the ground, he was caught by Kagome. "Aoi!" Mei yelled, "get this boy to a hospital," that is if it wasn't crushed in the fight. With that, Naruto was rushed off to a hospital. Mei then let out a sigh of relief and said, "It's finally over." Chapter 5, Jewels in the Desert. Naruto groaned to himself as he saw the white ceiling that was a common characteristic of a hospital. He had had a very rough night sleeping. He felt an incredible pain on his side the entire night. When he finally got to sleep, it wasn't for very long before the sun peeking through the window woke him up. "I hate hospitals," the force user groaned as he rose up from bed. As soon as he did, he heard a slight moan of protest. The blonde rolled his eyes, thinking that it was Kagome, or Haku. He turned to see a girl with dark hair tied in a ponytail and milky white skin. She slowly opened her eyes, revealing they were a sea green color, as she woke up and looked at Naruto. The pair looked at each other for a moment. Eek! The girl jumped back off the bed and into a corner. At that moment, a few nurses burst into the room to see a frantic girl and Naruto clutching his ears from her shriek. "You pervert!" the girl yelled. "Who do you think you are, pulling me into a bed like that?" Naruto shook his head and yelled, "Hold on, lady. I have really sharp hearing and I think you just busted my eardrums." At that moment, Kagome pushed her way into the room and said, "Okay, I'm trying to sleep, and after the whole fiasco from yesterday, who the hell is yelling this early in the morning?" The girl turned and saw Kagome and gasped. "Kagome-chan?" Kagome gasped at the sight of the girl and said, "Nami-chan." The two squealed and hugged each other like 2 old friends. The male nurses who were watching started to have nosebleeds at the sight of the 2 girls hugging. Naruto stared at the 2 for a moment before something clicked. "Nami?" Naruto asked, "as in the Sanbai?" The 2 reunited friends separated before turning to the whiskered boy. "Yes," Kagome answered, "this is Nami-chan. My old friend and the 3-tailed turtle in human form." "Hey, can we all have a minute?" The question was directed at the nurses and doctors who had come running when they heard Nami's screams. The doctors in turn left, and decided to give them some room for a while. "So how did this happen?" Kagome asked. "I thought that she would die when Yagura died." Naruto thought for a few minutes, then said, "My Kuro Shinka Kekai Genkai allows me to form lost parts when injured. What if Nami's chakra, while still in Yagura's body, reacted with my Kuro Shinka and my Chikaraten bloodline? The latter caused the chakra to condense and form a living entity while the Kuro Shinka gave it a body?" The 2 looked at the boy and Kagome broke the silence by saying, "So your bloodlines gave Nami-chan a new body?" The blonde blinked a few times and said, I guess. I'm not sure how it went, but it's the only thing I can think of at the time. At that moment a Miss Anbu opened the door and said, Fukusama, the council has requested your presence. Who are they? Naruto looked at the two girls and said, my advisors. The Anbu was silent for a second and said, they come too. Later in the council chambers. Amazing, Naruto thought as he and his friends were sent to the council chambers. This village just finished with a civil war, and the council just got called into session. I hope the council isn't as annoying here as it is back in Konoha. As soon as they were in the council room the sound of arguing reached their ears. At least until they saw the boy that had killed their former leader. At that moment they were joined by Meitorumi, Aoi and Chojuro. Welcome, honored guests, one of the elders on the council said. Well, they aren't as annoying so far, Naruto thought. We are glad to be here, Naruto said. Now why is it you've called us here? The elder continued and said, we are in need of leaders since our last one recently met his demise. Since you are the one who defeated him, we would ask that you be our new Kage. Naruto thought it over. He had always wanted to be the leader of a village. However, he also knew that he didn't have the experience of a leader. What if Konoha found out? They would most likely go to war again. They just got out of a civil war. The last thing they needed was another. Thought I am very flattered that you are asking such a high honor of me, Naruto said. I must decline. The council and the elders looked shocked. The elder asked, why not? Naruto sighed and said, I may be powerful, but when it comes to experience I lack. I want to get a few more years of experience under my belt before I start leading anything. The council looked mildly upset, but they saw the logic in the boy's words. I do, however, have another prime candidate, Naruto said, getting the council's attention. Who? The elder asked. Meitorumi, Naruto said, the leader of the bloodline rebels. The council looked shocked and some were about to start yelling when Naruto said, just hear me out on this. The council quieted down as Naruto explained, she was able to spur the despised in this village to fight. She also managed to outwit an army multiple times the size of her own. If that isn't the trademark of a good leader, I don't know what is. For those of you who don't want someone with a bloodline leading your village, just look at her. What difference do you see between you and her? The council members had the brains to look sheepish as they considered this. They had been so pulled up in the whole demon superstition thing they had been blinded to the fact that the rebels were just as human as they were. Do you agree with what he says, Terumi? The elder asked. The busted redhead simply nodded in agreement. No! A fat councilman yelled. I refuse to be ruled by some cheap bloodline bimbo. Everyone stared at him for a second until Naruto said, you do realize you just said that aloud in front of some very powerful women, right? The man realized as the combined killing intent of Mei, Kagome, Haku, and Nami hit him like a tidal wave. Kagome and Nami both cracked their knuckles in a very menacing manner. Word to the wise, Naruto said, run. The councilman jumped up and ran for his life with Nami and Kagome in hot pursuit. You may leave if you want to, Fukusan, the elder said. We would like to have a word with Mrs. Terumi in private. Naruto left the council room with a bow. He found Nami and Kagome a few minutes later next to the bloody heap of a council member. The two angry girls were dusting off their hands. Hey girls, Naruto said with a smile, you two having fun? The girls simply smiled at the blonde. Naruto was about to continue when he suddenly fell forward onto his knees and clutched his skull. Visions filled his head. He saw an expanding desert, a cave, a room full of crystals. Then he saw himself with his fist clenched facing three ninjas wearing headbands with the image of a sand jar on them. Naruto stopped grabbing his head and let out a breath of relief as he pain from his head left. Naruto, Nami asked, are you okay? Naruto shook himself and said, I think so. I had a vision. I saw a desert, and a cave full of crystals. Crystals full of force energy. Kagome looked at the blonde before her and asked, do you think this might be something of importance? Naruto thought for a minute and said, I believe so. I need to find those crystals. They could prove useful in the future. Kagome nodded and said, since it's a desert it's probably in wind country. It's due west from here. Thanks Kagome-chan, Naruto said before jumping out the nearby window and landing with a crash on the ground. Hold it! Rang Nami's voice. The blonde turned around just in time to catch a very large canteen. If you're going to a desert, young man, you'll need plenty of water, Nami said. Trust me, I've been there. After a few hours of running, a lot of water breaks, and running into a few trees, the blonde finally found himself in the desert. As soon as Naruto reached the desert's edge, he immediately sent out a wave of force energy. Where is it? He suddenly felt the force tell him something. There you are. The force user ran for the source of the energy. After about 20 minutes of running, he came to an expansive rock that had the mouth of a cave wide open. Naruto grinned as he made his way to the cave. Just as he was about to enter the cave, he had to dodge to the left to avoid a volley of kunai and shuriken aimed at him. The blonde whipped his head around to see a 7-masked ninja. They all had on headbands that had the images of a sand-filled jar on them. Who are you? Naruto asked. We are ninja of Sunagakure, the leader said. The treasure in that cave belongs to us. Leave now, and you will not be harmed. Naruto chuckled and said, I was just about to say the same thing. The ninja unleashed another barrage of kunai and shuriken. Naruto simply held up a hand. The kunai stopped cold in midair. With a wave of his hand, the projectiles were sent flying back at the users. 3 were killed while the others dodged. So you are the hero of Kiri and Nami, wave, the leader said. Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, What? The leader reached into his pocket and pulled out a book. He turned to a specific page and read out loud, Naruto Uzumaki Fukyu. Alias, Monster of the Stars. Appearance, 5'6", spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, whisker-like marks on face, black shirt, long black jeans, belt with red skull buckle, black combat boots, and red cloak. Abilities, capable of shape-shifting his arms into various forms and power to manipulate the world around him with his mind. Warning, do not engage in physical combat. Has shown the ability to consume the flesh of others, allegedly destroyed an entire army of mercenaries, and the fourth Mizukage. Naruto blinked a few times and said, wow. News travels fast in the ninja world, the Sunanin said as he put away the book and glared at the whiskered force user. I don't care who you are or what you can do, the Sunanin said, we found this place first, and whatever is in there will become property of Sunagakure. Naruto cracked his knuckles and said, I'm sorry, but I can't let you do that. No more words were exchanged between them. The 4 remaining Sunanin charged at the blonde, drawing weapons. One nin, a kunoichi, drew a pair of bladed fans. 2 others pulled out katana, while the leader drew a scimitar. Naruto focused the biomass in his arms, making take their muscle mass form. The 2 katana-wielding ninja charged first. The 2 swung their weapons intent of bisecting the man. Naruto simply caught their blades and snapped them in half. The blonde spun on his heel and drove the blades he gripped upward through their hearts. The blonde then spun around and threw the blades at the 2 remaining ninja. The kunoichi focused chakra into her hands and jumped in front of her boss and swung them, sending a gust of wind that knocked the blades away. She charged at the blonde, focusing more chakra into her fans. Naruto responded by dodging to the right and shifted his arms to their claw form. The kunoichi sunbathed of her fans in an attempt to slice him up with the wind. Sadly for her, Naruto caught her by the arms and then in a swift motion broke them. As she screamed, the leader of the group started to move backwards and ran for it. Kaiza, the woman said in an agonized voice, don't leave me please. The leader looked back and said, don't worry my dear, I shall return with reinforcements and avenge your death. Despite that speech, it was obvious that he was running to save his own hide. Naruto let out a low growl as he shifted one arm into a whip fist. He drew it back and let it fly, stabbing Kaiza through the back, and ripped the man from his spot and stabbed his claws through Kaiza's chest, making him scream in agony. You sicken me, the blonde said. You tried to abandon your comrades to save your own hide. I will make you suffer. Naruto focused his biomass and then slowly consumed the man into his being. Naruto then turned to the kunoichi and said, yours will be painless. The woman nodded and closed her eyes. The blonde rose his clawed arm and swung it. His deed done, he consumed what was left of the rest of the Sunanin to see if there was anything else he could learn from them. With that, Naruto entered the cave. After a few minutes, Naruto walked into a large chamber. The blonde stood in awe as he saw it completely covered in crystals. The crystals were all colors. Red, blue, purple, green, black, white, and silver, glowed and sparkled. I know I'm going to be embarrassed if someone hears me say this, Naruto said to no one in particular, but oh pretty. At that moment the blonde felt something behind him. He spun around to see 3 more Sunanin. 2 males and 1 female. The first male was the shortest of the 3. He wore black and brown with a little bit of white mixed in. He had a heavy bags under his eyes. He also had makeup around his light blue eyes, giving them a raccoon-like look. Above one eye he had the kanji for love in red. He also had a large gourd on his back. The second male wore a black outfit that resembled a cat suit and purple makeup on his face. He also had a bandaged package on his back. The only girl was a blonde with her hair drawn up in multiple ponytails. She had muscle, meaning she took her training seriously. She had on a white battle dress and a huge battle fan on her back. Who are you supposed to be? The guy in cat suit asked. I could ask you the same thing, makeup boy, Naruto said. The makeup-wearing man growled and yelled, "It's not makeup. It's war paint." The boy with the gourd turned to the cat-suited boy and said, "Shut up, Kankuro. You're an embarrassment to our village." The boy gulped nervously and whimpered, "Sorry, Gaara." Gaara simply scoffed and said, "Temari, take care of this. I don't want to waste my sand on this weakling." The girl, Temari, smirked and pulled out her battle fan. She jumped down and charged at her fellow blonde. She opened up her fan and yelled, "Wind Side Jutsu." She swung her fan, unleashing a torrent of wind. Naruto simply focused his chakra, causing the wind to diverge and strike the crystals in the room around them. To their shock, the crystals flashed in white before turning back to their original colors. Temari stared in shock. "I missed," she thought. "I've never missed." Naruto took advantage of her shock before he charged and slammed his fist into her stomach, knocking her up into the air, and then grabbed her by the ankle and then slammed her back into the ground. "I hope you do better than your sister, clown boy," Naruto said to Kankuro. The boy growled loudly and charged at Naruto. He sent out some chakra strings with the intent of wrapping the blonde from head to toe. When the wires did wrap around him, Naruto sent out a wave of force lightning that sent a huge bolt of lightning that zapped Kankuro. The boy screamed in pain as the lightning coursed through the young ninja's body. The boy fell to the ground unconscious with a bit of smoke rising off his body. Naruto then turned toward the remaining Sunanin. "Impressive," Gaara said. "I've never seen such strength before." Naruto turned to the raccoon-eyed boy and said, "Thanks." Gaara's eyes became distant, and Naruto heard something. Something from the redhead's mind. something that called out for blood. Blood to spilt all over the cavern. Mother, Gaara said, Mother wants your blood. She will have your blood. There is something wrong with you, Naruto said as he felt the force going haywire on the Sunanin. It starts with that mother of yours. Naruto held out a hand and said, Calm down, Gaara. Let me into your mind. At that moment Naruto extended the force and Gaara felt his mind being entered, but could do nothing to stop it. Inside Gaara's mind, Naruto looked around and saw that Gaara's mindscape was a mess. He could understand that the place was desert, since that's where Gaara lived. What he found disturbing was the fact that there were sand-covered corpses and blood-covered sand everywhere. In the back of the desert was a large cave with the kanji for seal on the sides of it. This kid is a Jinchuriki? Naruto thought. That might explain why he seemed so unstable. The whiskered boy slowly made his way into the cave. As he made his way inside, the sound of crying reached his ears. He found what looked like a young Gaara about the age of 6 in a fetal position crying and tightly hugging a teddy bear. What's wrong with you? Naruto asked, getting the boy's attention. Who are you? The young Gaara asked. He might find you. You have to leave? Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked. Who? Hey! A new voice yelled. What are you doing here? The blonde turned to see a large raccoon-like creature made completely out of sand with spots of blue on it in places and yellow eyes with 4 diamonds in the iris. Gaara suddenly cried out and hid behind Naruto, trembling in fear. I could ask you the same question, Naruto said with calm exterior. I'm the Ichibi no Shikaku, the sand monster said. If you must know, pal, you're trespassing. Now get out. Before I crush you like a grape. Naruto rubbed his chin. At that moment he noticed something. A chain was wrapped firmly around the monster's neck. Naruto remembered from the first time he met Kagome that she didn't have a chain around her neck. How about no? Naruto answered, making the raccoon monster growl. The raccoon charged forward, intent on chomping on Naruto. The whiskered boy jumped up and landed on the raccoon's head before unleashing a blast of force lightning that sent volts through both Shikaku and whoever was holding the chain. A voice cried in pain in the darkness. The volts of lightning illuminated the dark, revealing an old monk holding onto the chain. Naruto felt the force going haywire again and said, Pal, I don't know what you're doing here, but I have a feeling that it can't be good. Naruto used the force to pick up a bunch of rocks before hurling them at the monk, crushing him while he was paralyzed by the lightning. There was only a loud crunch and a cry of pain as the monk was crushed by the boulders. The chain around Shikaku's neck rusted before it turned to dust and fell to the sands. Naruto looked at the raccoon before it turned to him and muttered in a weak voice, Thank you. In the real world, Naruto's eyes snapped open as he returned to his own mind. He looked at Gaara, who swayed back and forth before collapsing on the dirt. Soft snoring reached Naruto's ears. The blonde Jinchuriki smiled at his handiwork before remembering that he had a job to do. He then made his way around the cavern, grabbing a few crystals. One of each color. After that the blonde put them in his pouch, and was about to walk out when he realized something. If people realized what these crystals would do, it would mean a lot of trouble for him later. He noticed something sticking out of Kankuro's pocket. Naruto grinned to himself before walking over to the clown-faced ninja. Later, a man in brown and white suit with most of a hood covering his face ran into the cave out of breath. Little brats, he growled, can't believe that they ran off without me like that. Punks. Once Baki caught his breath, he entered the cavern. He found his students on the floor of the cavern out cold. He gasped when he saw Gaara out cold and was about to start running when he realized something. Nothing was happening. No bloodshed. No screaming. No crushing sands. No nothing. Gaara stirred and slowly rose up from the ground. The redhead yawned and said to no one in particular, So that is what a dreamless sleep is like. Kankuro and Temari slowly came up next. They looked around and noticed something immediately. Explosive tags. Kankuro yelled. At that moment sand wrapped around Gaara, Temari, Kankuro, and the old guy. At that moment the tags exploded. This caused some of the crystals to crack and certain unstable ones ruptured and exploded themselves, causing a chain reaction that set the entire cavern in a fiery blaze. Out of the smoke 4 sand cocoons crash-landed into sand dune. They all fell apart, revealing the 4 sand nin. Okay, I might as well ask, the old man said. What the hell happened in there? Temari looked at the man and said, I don't know. We met this blonde guy. He beat us, knocked us out. Wait, he knocked Gaara out? Gaara looked at Temari and said, He didn't fight me. He did something. I can't hear mother's voice anymore. The urge to kill is gone as well. Gaara's fellow sand nin looked at him in shock. Now if you'll excuse me, Gaara said, I have a lot to sleep to catch up on. As soon as that was said, Gaara collapsed on the ground, making a light snoring sound. Temari and Kankuro braced themselves for nothing, when they realized nothing was happening. The two exchanged surprised looks while looking at the old guy for answers. All they got was a shoulder shrug. I'm not carrying him, Baki-sensei, Kankuro said. Ditto, Temari said. Baki was about to say something, but just scoffed, and then picked up the sleeping boy who groaned slightly in his sleep. The 3 conscious ninja began to return to their village. This is going to be one very annoying mission report, Baki thought bitterly. Chapter 6. Rise of the Bounty Hunter. Naruto ran with a large smirk on his face. He had just helped out a fellow Jinchuriki and he got his hands on some force crystals. He felt the small rocks jingle in his pocket. He smirked to himself. With these I'll be able to make some lightsabers from the guys back in Kiri, Naruto thought happily as he ran. It was at that moment something dawned on him. The blonde screeched to a halt as he thought, oh man. I don't have the technology to make them. Starkiller Sensei told me that was the last bit of technology like this. What am I going to do? Naruto groaned in disappointment. He knew from experience that force crystals couldn't withstand chakra. While force energy was wild, chakra was usually tame. Force crystals weren't made for chakra, so if he tried coursing chakra through it, the jewel would just glow, not produce anything at all. Naruto then headed for a nearby town. The blonde walked into a karaoke bar and sat down. He growled to himself as he ordered a drink. He then saw a bunch of wanted posters. The blonde grinned to himself. Since this mission was a waste of time, he figured he could take his frustrations out on some poor missing nin. He looked through the posters until one in particular caught his eye. Name, Shofet. Rank, civilian. Wanted, alive for questioning. Crimes, withholding advanced weaponry from Kusagakure and the Land of Snow. Reward $3 million. Don't know Raya, so I'm going with this. Naruto read the crime again. And then read it again. He had heard of Django and Boba Fett from Starkiller. He told him that the both of them were incredibly powerful bounty hunters that gave Jedi a run for their money. The blonde rubbed his chin and thought, could be the answer I'm looking for. If he does hold the technology, one might be able to recreate the lightsabers. Naruto then ran up to the bartender and asked, do you know where I can find this man? The bartender gave a laugh and said, another bounty hunter, eh? Well kid, I might want to tell you now, anyone who ever went after him before hasn't come back. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, I'm different than the rest. Now where can I find him? The bartender groaned and said, he should live in some hut a few miles down the road. I know because I've seen him before. Oh, and you owe me 1.99 for the drink. Naruto paid the man, downed his drink, and then stated heading out of town to find his new possible ally. After running for a while, Naruto arrived at a small run-down hut. The young force user then entered the hut looking around. Hello? Naruto called, is there a Shofet in the house? Suddenly alarm bells rang in the boy's head. He heard the sound of a weapon firing up. The blonde jumped to the right to avoid a blast of energy that came out of nowhere. He spun on his heel to see an intimidating figure behind him. It was a tall man covered head to toe in armor. The armor was black with some red highlights. In his hand was blaster, and on his back was a sophisticated-looking object. The figure looked at Naruto and said, what are you doing in my house? His voice was sort of muffled due to the fact that he was speaking through a helmet. Naruto rose up from his crouched position and said, my name is Naruto Uzumaki Fukyu. I'm here to talk. The man scoffed and said, I've had plenty of talks before. My answer is still the same. I'm not giving you or any one of those greedy pains in the neck any of my weapons. They were gifts from my ancestors, so just back off. Naruto waved his hands in front of him and said, I wasn't sent by Snow or Kusa. I'm here to request your help with something. The armored man lowered his gun slightly. Naruto could tell that even though his guard was relaxed, it wasn't completely down. What kind of help? The man asked. Naruto lowered his arms, not fully letting up on his guard, and said, I'm in need of something made for me. Are you familiar with lightsabers? The armored man said, I know all right. My ancestor, Jango Fett, was killed by a Jedi named Keegan Jean. Why do you want me to build one? Naruto simply reached into his cloak and pulled out his lightsabers and activated them. So, the now obvious Shofet said, you're that guy Starkiller told me about. Naruto gained a surprised look. You know my old master? Sho laid his blaster down and said, he came to me back when I lived in Snow. He asked me to build him some swords at my workshop. Since he didn't try to force me into it, I did. Plus his money was good. Naruto smiled at the man and said, I'm glad to see that there's someone out here I can trust. Wait, what are you doing out here anyway? The man sighed and said, I had to leave town. Snow is currently ruled by some tyrant named Doto. He gained word of me making the weapons for your master. When he did, he came down and demanded that I make him enough weapons for an army. I refused. I knew he would be back, so I ran. Sadly, he already sent out ninja after me. If you're wondering how Kusa got involved, is that they found me fist and captured me. They tried to torture the information on my weapons out of me. I escaped, and I wound up here. The man then took off his helmet, showing he had a great deal of scars on his face. Most likely they were from his torture at the hands of Kusagakure. So, Naruto said, will you help me and build my swords? Sho rubbed his scarred chin and said, I will, but there is an underlying conflict. I have limited resources compared to my ancestors' days. I have plenty of the metals thanks to smelting, but I don't have very many of the power cores that are needed for a lightsaber to work. I only have like 7 or so. Naruto smiled and said, good. That's all the force crystals I have in possession at the time. So do we have a... Naruto stopped and started to space out. His vision changed and he felt strong negative emotions. His vision went into another direction. He was shown a group of Kusa and Snow ninja heading for the hut. They were a few miles away, but Naruto knew they were coming. His vision changed again and in another direction. He saw a man approaching. His hair was long and black while his skin was completely pale. Naruto shuddered. He felt that the dark side had corrupted his heart and mind quite some time ago. Naruto came back and stumbled as he rubbed his aching head. You okay, kid? Sho asked. We have a problem, Naruto said. It seems that a group of Kusa and Snow ninja have learned you are here. Now they have teamed up to take you down. On top of that there is someone else coming. I don't know who he is, but the dark side has completely taken over his heart. Sho scowled before he grabbed his helmet and put it back on. Let them come, he said, I'll show them they should mess with me. Naruto placed a hand on the man's armored shoulder and said, I don't think that will be necessary, my friend. Are by any chance familiar with explosives? A few minutes later, the Snow and Kusanin arrived at the hut. Sho Fet. The leader of the Kusanin yelled, turn yourself in now, and you will not be harmed. Resist and we will be forced to use force. Man, that sounded better in my head. When there was no reply, the two leaders made the motion for their teams to enter the complex. The two teams went to the sides of the door and made clear motions. The leader of the Snow Nin then broke down the door. The ninja all stood in the door. They all stared at the strange object on the table. It was a large black box that had a red light on it that blinked every few seconds. At that moment one of the Snow Ninja noticed on a mirror on the far wall there was a note that said, suckers. At that moment the box flashed, and then, boom! A huge explosion rocked the ground. The entire hut went up in smoke along with all that were inside of it. Just a little ways from the flames a man with pale skin and black hair stood with a scowl. So much for the advanced weaponry, he said. Oh well, I can still continue my plans without him. With that the man slowly sank into the ground until he was completely gone. Farther from the flames Naruto and Sho watched the flames rise up. Nice fireworks, Naruto said with a smile. Yeah, Sho said as he crossed his arms over his chest plate. So you ready to head to Kiri? Naruto asked. The armored man turned to him and said, I still don't think I should join a hidden village. How do I know they won't try to steal my weapons to try and become strong again after the whole civil war thing? Naruto shook his head and said, the new Mizukage isn't like that. Besides, you don't have to be a ninja. You can be a mercenary hired to take out enemies of the village. On top of that, you'd be able to follow in your ancestors' footsteps and become a bounty hunter to take down missing Nin. Sho seemed to consider this. He then nodded in agreement. With that the pair headed back to Kiri. After a few hours of running and flying, Sho and Naruto arrived in Kiri. They were instantly approached by guards. Who are you and what is your business? Guard 1 asked. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, Naruto Uzumaki Fuki, returning from a recent mission. Guard 2 eyed the armored Fet and asked, and him? Naruto pointed a thumb at Sho and said, he's with me. He wishes to join Kiri. Guard 1 said, remove your helmet, sir. Fet scowled under his helmet before removing it, showing his scarred face. The two guards looked at one another before shrugging. They hadn't seen his face before since they hadn't seen any recently made wanted posters. The two guards let them pass. Naruto and Fet then made their way to the Mizukage Manor. The pair entered the room and found an interesting sight. Mei and Kagome were passed out on the couch. Nami was currently asleep too and was currently snuggling up to a passed-out Chujiro, smiling comfortably. Naruto smiled seeing his friends had decided to stay up and wait for him. Fet shook his head. Do you know where I can work here? The man asked. Naruto rubbed his chin and said, I think there's a basement somewhere. You can work there. Just don't make too much noise. In all honesty, this whole thing has left me tired. Naruto reached under his cloak and handed it to the bounty hunter. Before they set the charges, Naruto grabbed most of Sho's ancient technology. He was surprised that the man was able to perform an amateur sealing jutsu that put most of his tools and materials in scrolls. He also had the same seals hidden in his armor that held his combat weaponry. With that, Sho went downstairs and set to work. Naruto, however, sat down on the couch gently and fell straight to sleep. The next morning, Mei and Kagome yawned as they woke up. As soon as they did, their noses were assaulted by a delicious smell. The two rose up from the couch and went to the kitchen. They were introduced to the sight of Naruto at the stove frying up some bacon. Morning, girls, Naruto said. The two girls then proceeded to glomp Naruto. Easy there, girls, Naruto said. I'm in front of a hot stove. The two girls got off Naruto and both proceeded to bash him over the head. Itai, he yelled as he rubbed his skull. What was that for? Mei scowled and said, you were gone all day. We thought something happened to you. Kagome nodded and said, do you have any idea how worried we were? We thought you were gone. Naruto rubbed the lump now forming on his skull. I'm sorry, the whiskered boy said. Now then, where are Nami and Chujiro? The pair looked in the living room to see the pair still cuddled up together. Oh, they are so cute together. Kagome cooed. Mei smiled and whipped out a camera. As she snapped a photo, the noise awoke the sleep pair. The pair looked at each other and blushed bright red. The pair then jumped away from each other. Unlike with Naruto, Nami wasn't saying anything about it. Pervert. I says sorry, Chujiro stuttered. It's okay, Nami said, you're actually pretty comfy. Chujiro's blush increased tenfold. Then group became aware of footsteps. The group turned to see Sho standing near the basement door. The unmasked man said, do I smell bacon? During breakfast, Mei went ahead and broke the ice. Okay, I might as well ask, she said with an irritated tone. Who is this guy? Sho looked at the red-headed Kage and said, my name is Sho Fet, bounty hunter, and new ally of Naruto. Kagome raised an eyebrow and said, Fet? As in Django and Boba Fett? This drew confused looks from everyone else who didn't know. Naruto explained. One of my teachers told me of an old bounty hunter named Django Fett. In the old time, technology was much more advanced. Weaponry was much more deadly. You could kill someone from a much farther distance, and not have to get up close without using chakra. The group looked interested as Naruto continued his story. Sho is a descendant of Jango Fett and his son Boba Fett. He has access to advanced technology. I've convinced him to join the village after he left his when they tried to force his secrets out of him. Sho nodded as he scarfed down his food. By the way, I managed to get your little toys done. I also made some improvements to yours. Naruto gulped down some milk and said, did you work all night? The bounty hunter grinned and said, yeah, I did. That a problem? Well, I'll show you them right after I take a little nap. With that, the armored man got up and then collapsed on the couch. He immediately started to snore. Let's give him some peace, okay? Naruto asked his friend. They all nodded. Hey Chokuin, Nami said, care to show me around the village? Chujiro gulped slightly and said, okay. Nami seized the man's arm and then the two walked out the door. Mei smiled at the leaving pair and asked out loud, I wonder how long it will take for them to start dating? Kagome shrugged while Naruto shook his head. If we're lucky she'll break that shy streak of his, Naruto said, crossing his arms. Sho got everyone's attention by coughing and said, I hate to interrupt, but the project Naruto had me working on all night is something you should see. Naruto looked at the bounty hunter and said, you worked on those all night? The bounty hunter shrugged his shoulders and said, I tend to lose myself in my work. Dreadful habit. Naruto simply rolled his eyes and said, well, show us already? Sho rolled his eyes and led the three down to the basement. Inside they found lots of advanced machinery hung up all over the place. What caught their eyes though was a bench that had 7 lightsabers on it. Each one had the same design, so they weren't truly remarkable except that they looked so advanced. What are these, Naruto? Mei asked, a little confused. Naruto smiled at the confused Kage and said, these are lightsabers. The weapons I have on my belt here. Kagome looked shocked and said, you actually have more of those? Naruto smiled at the redhead and said, yep. He's probably the only person on the planet who could make these. Now we have the only copies. The problem is they're limited to the 7 here. Mei smiled and said, you really seem to know how to make the most of something, kid. Naruto smiled at the woman and said, thanks, Mei-chan. Now then, would you like one? Or Mei was up to the table in a second, was trying to pick one out. She held up one and when she pushed a button and a red blade was brought into existence. She wowed at the sight of the blade. She reached out to touch it until Naruto slapped her hand away. Mei-chan, Naruto scolded, you can't just touch one of these blades like that. It's made of energy, not only does it cut, it burns. It's also capable of slicing through metal or any other hard surface. Mei smiled at the boy. At that moment Kagome walked up to the girl and said, I think that red one suits me best. Mei growled slightly at being denied. Naruto then stopped her and said, there's a blue one somewhere in the mix of all that. Mei thought for a second and said, okay, I'll take that one. It'll go with my outfit at least. Naruto smiled at her happily, seeing as she understood. Naruto then looked at Sho and said, what are you going to do now? Your job here is done. Sho shrugged his shoulders and said, I think I'll stay around. Besides, it'll be fun to see what happens when you teach these little ladies how to use these new toys. Naruto rolled his eyes at the man. Chapter 7, Return to Konoha. Do I have to? Naruto complained. I'm sorry, Naruto, but we need to do this, Mei said. Besides, as long as you are wearing that headband, you have to follow my orders. It had been about a month since Naruto returned to Kirigakyo with Sho Fett. Since then, Naruto had trained Mei and Kagome in the use of the lightsabers. Haku herself took the white one. The three progressed at quite a fast pace. Naruto was also made an honorary ninja of Kiri. Unfortunately for him, he still had TOS tarred off at the bottom of the ladder at Genin. Back to present day, Naruto was currently upset because he, Haku, and Chojuro had to take the Chunin exams. It wasn't the fact that he had to take the exams that had him upset. The problem was the fact that he had to take them in his old torture chamber Konoha. Naruto glared at the new Mizukage and sighed, knowing that he had no choice in the matter since she was obviously not going to be moved on the subject. She wanted the three to go with Zabuza as a Jonin sensei to show that, even though they just got out of a civil war, that they weren't weak. Fine, I'll go, Naruto said, but if someone tries to kill me while I'm there, I won't hesitate to rip their hearts out. Mei smirked and said, I love it when you get all bloodthirsty. So sexy. Naruto blushed and quickly got out of the office before she said something that would make him have a nosebleed. Mei smirked to herself. A few days later, Naruto, Haku, Chojuro and Zabuza made their way to Konoha. They could see the gates. Naruto was still very adamant about not going there, but he didn't have a choice. As they reached the gate, two Chunin approached them and said, name and reason for being here. Zabuza stepped forward. We're here for the Chunin exams. If you don't believe us, here are our papers. The Chunin took the papers. The man looked over the papers and nodded upon seeing the stamp on that paper, made it authentic. I thought Kiri was still in the war. One Chunin said, it looks like the war really is over. The pair let them enter the village. As Naruto walked past them, one of the Chunin recognized him. He took out a walkie-talkie. In the village, Naruto and his new team found themselves the center of attention. Some people were wondering what a bunch of Kiri nin were doing here. Other nin were sizing them up in case they were looking for a fight. As they started searching for a hotel, they were suddenly approached by some ANBU. I'm sorry to impose on you, one of the ANBU in a pig mask said, but the Hokage wants to have a word with you. Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, you okay with this, sensei? Zabuza raised an eyebrow and said, I guess. Just so long as nobody causes any trouble. With that, the ANBU escorted the Kiri team to the Hokage's office. Once they were inside, the three were greeted to the sight of the old man putting up a valiant fight against his age-old nemesis paperwork. The old man looked up from the papers and said, "Naruto, it's good to see you again. You've grown quite well over the years, haven't you?" Naruto nodded and said, "It's good to see you, old man. Has the council been giving you more gray hairs?" The old man rolled his eyes and said, "You bet they have. They tried to send Hunter Nin after you when you went missing. After Kakashi came and told us about your powers, they wanted to send them after you again so they could use you as breeding stock to gain the bloodlines that you possess." Naruto rolled his eyes and said, "Why is it the council here is annoying and arrogant while the one in Kiri is actually more pleasant to deal with?" The old man shrugged and said, "Probably because they don't take the peace that they have at the moment for granted." Naruto nodded and said, "Well then, it was good seeing you, old man. By the way, did Kakashi give you the message?" The old man nodded. The old Kage then said, "You might want to watch yourselves. The council may try something less than nice to try and get you to stay here." Naruto smirked and said, "I'd like to see them try." With that, the Kiri nin left the office. "Hey guys," Naruto said, "while WRE here, mind if we get some ramen? I know the best place in town." The other three ninja looked at each other before shrugging. After Zabuza nodded, Naruto had to resist the urge to cry out in joy. The boy quickly ran off to the best restaurant in the village. After a few minutes, they arrived at a small shack. The team entered the bar and sat down. After a few minutes, a young woman exited the kitchen and said, "Welcome to Ichiroku's, how may I?" The woman stopped when she saw the familiar whisker marks. Almost immediately she grabbed the boy and pulled him into a powerful hug that buried Naruto in her chest. "Naruto!" the woman cried, "where have you been? I miss you." Naruto's face was now purple on account of his blush, and the fact that he was currently having a little trouble breathing. "I am Chan," Naruto struggled to say, affection-crushing windpipe. The woman let go and said, "Sorry? Seriously though, where were you?" Naruto answered, "I'll tell you over ramen." "I'll have 3 bowls of pork." Chojuro said, "I'll take a fish-flavored if possible." Haku said, "I'll have a steak ramen." Zabzua said, "I'll have a pork ramen too." The woman went back into the kitchen and came out with the orders. As they ate, Naruto told the ramen chef of what had happened to him so far. She was surprised to hear that he had come so far so quickly. She was also surprised that he was eating his ramen so slowly since he had made of habit, and the reputation of making a huge amount of the food vanished within seconds. After they finished eating, they were interrupted when the flap was opened. The 4 present turned to see a group of 6 genin and 2 jonin enter shack. The first genin was male, wearing mostly gray clothes and a jacket with a hairdo of black hair in the shape of a pineapple. The second genin was male, wearing a white shirt, a green jacket over it with brown hair and swirls on his cheeks. The third one was a girl in purple with platinum blonde hair. The fourth was a boy with long black hair and beige clothing with white eyes. The fifth was a boy with wearing a green jumpsuit with orange legwarmers, a bowl-cut hairdo, huge eyebrows and wide eyes. The sixth was a girl in a pink Chinese shirt with her hair done up in 2 buns. The first jonin was a larger version of the 5th genin, while the other had spiky hair and had a cigarette in his mouth. "Who are you supposed to be?" the boy with white eyes said. "Shut up, kid," Zabuza said, "we're eating at the moment." The white eyes boy narrowed his eyes at the boy and said, "Answer my question, commoner." The larger version of the green kid scolded the genin and said, "Niji, there is no need to be rude." He turned to Naruto and said, "Forgive my student Niji. My name is Mike Guy. You already met Niji. These are my other students Lee and Tenten." The guy with the cigarette said, "My name is Isuma. These are my genin Ino, Shikamaru, and Shuji." Zabuza grinned and said, "Nice to see some people with manners around here. My name is Zabuza. This is Haku, Naruto, and Chojuro." The 3 genin nodded at being recognized. "Why are you Kirin doing in Konoha?" Niji asked still very rudely. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, "I don't care what your problem is, pal, but you might want to lose it before I decide to beat it out of you, white eyes." Niji glared at the boy. "Oh, I tremble with fear," Naruto said. "I will humor you though. We're here for the Chunin exams. Or have you been under a rock for a while?" Niji glared at the so-called commenter for how he was speaking to him. Zabuza paid for his team's meal and they left. As they did, Naruto felt Niji still glaring at him. "Hey, white eyes," Naruto said, "you might want to lose the attitude and avert those eyes somewhere else before you lose them." The tone he had told them that the boy in front of them was completely serious about that threat. Niji felt himself sweat. A small amount of killing intent the boy was leaking out hit them. Naruto and his team continued on their way. "They may be a problem in the future," Niji said. "Only because you had to go and make them an enemy," Tenten scolded her teammate. As they left, Naruto said, "I hope I get to fight white eyes there. I'll be happy to beat some manners into the punk." The 4 went back to searching for a hotel when Naruto noticed they were being followed. It was quite obvious since what was following them was a square rock and a pair of eye holes on it. "That is by far one of the worst disguises I have ever seen," Haku whispered to Chojuro. "Ditto," the blue-haired boy answered. Naruto smirked and said, "Man, I got to sit down." Naruto then sat down in the box, crushing it. A voice from the box cried out, "Hey, get off." Naruto got off the box and there was a large blast of smoke. There was the sound of coughing before the smoke cleared, revealing 3 kids. One was a boy with black hair, glasses, with a little bit of mucus running out of his nose. The second was a girl with brown hair and pigtails and a perpetual blush. The third was another boy with spiky brown hair and a scarf wearing gray helmet that had a pin that had the picture of a frowning face on it. Who are you runts supposed to be? Naruto asked. The boy with the sniffles said, my name is Udon, the smartest kid in the academy. The girl said, I'm Moegi, the cutest girl in the academy. The last boy said, I'm Konohamaru, the next Hokage. The three then got together and said, and we are the Konohamaru Corps. When they didn't hear anything they thought it was because the people before them were in awe. When they looked they saw the Kirinin walking away. Hey! Konohamaru yelled, where are you going? Zabuza answered, where it is less noisy. Konohamaru glared at the man. The swordsman stopped and asked, did you just glare at me? Konohamaru started to sweat. A death glare was turned his way. The boy gulped loudly before he and his friends started running for their lives. Watch where you're going, you little brat. The Kirinin followed the kid since, even though he was annoying, he didn't deserve to be beaten up. They turned the corner the kid did and found that he was being bullied by a duo of Sunanin. Naruto recognized them as two of the three ninja he fought in the desert when he was going to get the force crystals. Let me go, you cross-dressing freak. Konohamaru yelled, I'm Konohamaru Sarutobi. Kankuro chuckled and said, like I care. Naruto made himself known and said, you know you shouldn't be messing with kids younger than you. The makeup-wearing boy glared at the hooded boy, whom he didn't recognize at the moment. And why is that? Kankuro asked arrogantly. Because if remember correctly, Sarutobi is the name of the current Hokage. I guess they got rid of the normal ANBU guard. At that moment a bunch of ANBU made their presence known around them. While they brought them back, Naruto said as the ANBU appeared. The two Sunanin started to sweat as they knew they were in some deep crud. Besides, I don't think the redhead in the tree next to the emo with the duck but hairdo is very happy with you, Naruto pointed out. The pair turned to see the third member of their team, Gaara. Next to him was Sasuke in the tree. The pair jumped down from the branch. Out of nowhere came the pink-haired girl that was on Sasuke's team. Kankuro, Gaara said, Baki-sensei said we weren't supposed to make a scene. Kankuro gulped and said, sorry Gaara. Gaara simply huffed and said, come on, we're going to be late for our meeting. As they were about to leave, Gaara asked, before we go, might I ask who you are? Sasuke grinned and said, Sasuke Uchiha. Gaara glared at the onyx-eyed boy and said, not you, him. Naruto coursed his arm and said, Naruto Uzumaki Fuku, at your service. I already know your names from Outlast encounters. Sasuke glared at Naruto, now recognizing him. Kankuro and Temari looked nervous since this guy effortlessly beat them into the ground the last time they saw him. I look forward to fight you in the exams, Fuku, Gaara said with eyes that told them of an upcoming challenge. Gaara wasn't insane now. While he didn't fight to kill, he did enjoy a good challenge, and Naruto was going to be the one to give it to him. Naruto nodded. With that the Sand team left. The group from Mist stated to leave only to be stopped by Sasuke. What are you doing here? Sasuke growled. Naruto turned to him and asked, does nobody know about the Chunin exams or something? Sasuke understood immediately after that question. I thought that Kiri was still in a civil war, Sakura said. It ended recently, Zabuza said, making himself known. Sasuke recognized him and was about to say something arrogant and stupid when a quick glare from Naruto shut him up. With no more words exchanged between the two teams, they parted ways. Sasuke sent a subtle glare at the back of the whiskered blonde's head, which Naruto simply ignored. These exams are going to be fun, Naruto thought. The next day, Naruto and his teammates made their way to the tower where the exams were being held. Naruto and his teammates walked up the stairs to the third floor where the exam room was. As they got on the second floor, the three immediately sensed a genjutsu. A bunch of other genin were huddled around a door wanting to get in. Just keep walking, Naruto whispered. The last thing any of us need to do is to draw attention to ourselves. At that moment Sasuke stepped up and said, drop the genjutsu. We won't fall for these stupid tricks. Naruto's sweat dropped and whispered, just like that. The boys' teammates' sweat dropped at how dumb and arrogant this guy really was. He had just given them a lot more competition just for the sake of to show off how superior he was. A few minutes later the genin were all in the exam room waiting for things to come to a head. Naruto looked around and saw another Konoha team. There was a girl with indigo hair and white eyes wearing a thick lavender coat. Another was a boy with a high collar and sunglasses, while there was a pale boy with a tanto on his waist along with a sketch pad and some ink. Naruto also felt some ill intentions from the other side of the room. Naruto turned to see two teams from Kumo. One team consisted of 3 boys while the other one consisted of 2 girls and a boy. Naruto reached out to them with the force. I can't believe I have to seduce that Hyuga boy, the redhead Kumo girl thought. Not only does he look like a jerk, he probably is completely arrogant. Naruto switched to the blonde who thought, why is the Raikage so adamant on having the Byakugan? There are other more powerful bloodlines out there. Still, he is my Kage and I must serve him. Naruto disconnected the force from her and thought, wow, she is loyal. Naruto reached out to male who thought, I wonder how I can get Karui-san angry this time? Naruto rolled his eyes at that. Naruto then felt the negative emotions of the all-male Kumo team and realized that they were after the Hyuga girl. If they were planning on doing what he thought they were doing, heads were going to roll. The question is, would he, Naruto Uzumaki Fuku, protector of the innocent and hero of Nami and Kiri, do something about it? You bet your life he would. I want information on Naruto Uzumaki Fuku, came an annoying voice. Naruto was ripped from his thoughts as he turned to see Sasuke talking to some silver-haired genin with glasses. Naruto Uzumaki Fuku, the silver-haired boy said, pulling out a card. Just as he was about to read it, Naruto ripped the card from the boy's hands. Hey, Naruto looked at the card and said, I wouldn't if I were you, my friend. If you want to learn about me, wait until I show you my skills. Naruto ripped the card in half. Kabuto glared at the man from behind his glasses. I had plenty of information for my master on those cards. Kabuto mentally ranted. Naruto heard his thoughts and was wondering what he meant by that when there was a huge burst of smoke from the corner. Listen up, you maggots! A commanding voice yelled. Everyone spun on their heels to see a tall, well-built man dressed in a black trench coat with a bandana on his head. My name is Ibiki Marino. I'll be the proctor for the exam, so shut up and find your seats. With that, everyone filed in. The Chunin exams had finally begun. Chapter 8, Slaughter in the Forest. Naruto had to resist the urge to yawn as he sat in the classroom. The first part of the Chunin exams so far had been a complete and total bore. So far they had to take a written test with questions that were far beyond normal genin ability to answer, meaning that the people taking the test had to cheat. He had noticed a few of the genin around him had already caught on to this and were already cheating using their own skills. He himself found someone who knew all the answers and used the force to listen to the man. He then relayed the answers to Chujiro and Haku. In the meantime, those who were caught cheating were being sent out of the room with their team. After about an hour, Ibiki, the man in charge, stood up and said, Okay, maggots. Now we are down to the final question. For those of you who don't think you can stand the pressure can leave now. Those of you who try to take it and get it wrong are forbidden from taking the exam next year. Take your pick now. A few of the genin around them looked nervous and decided it wasn't worth it, and they could always try again next year. Alright, Ibiki said, now I would like to say to those of you remaining, you pass. Everyone stared in shock. The Curie team didn't look that surprised, however. What do you mean we passed? Sakura, whom Naruto recognized by voice, asked clearly in shock. Simple, Ibiki said, you pass? This test was mostly to examine how well you did at gathering information and not getting caught. In other words, a test at reconnaissance. It was also to see how well you hold up under extreme pressure. Ibiki took the bandana off his head, revealing multiple scars and stab wounds. Everyone around him looked shocked or disgusted. Some of the weaker genin even turned slightly green. Holding your own in torture is a show of your own strength, Ibiki said. I managed to endure many hours of it before my rescue team finally showed up. Now then, when the next proctor gets here. The man was cut off when a large object crashed through the window. It unfolded, revealing a banner that read, introducing the Hidden Leaf sexiest and most sadistic kunoichi ever. Anko Midarashi. In front of the banner stood a woman who wore a mesh shirt under a brown trench coat with a miniskirt and shin guards above her sandals. A few of the guys were drooling at the sight of her, while the girls looked upset at how the woman was dressed. Naruto actually clapped and said, great entrance. Though I would have done it differently. Anko raised an eyebrow at the genin and said, oh really? How so? Naruto thought for a second and said, first I would have sent in the banner. Then I would have used a flash bomb and a few lights to get everyone's attention. While their attention was on the banner, I would have snuck up behind someone and freaked them out, gaining everyone's attention and testing how they react to unexpected elements. Anko tapped her chin and thought for a second before saying, good idea. I'm going to have to give that a shot next year. Ibiki's sweat dropped before saying, Anko, you're early again. Anko shrugged and said, hey, at least I'm not 2 hours late to everything like some silver-haired jerk I know. On the other side of Konoha, Kakashi sneezed. As Anko looked around the room, she noticed something. Ibiki, you're starting to lose your touch, Anko said. There are so many of them left. Ibiki groaned and said, just get on with this so I can go home. Anko sighed and said, okay, you little runts, let's move on to the second exam. Oh, and for those of you worried about a lot of competition, don't worry. This whole group should be cut in half by the time I'm done with you. A few people looked unsettled at that comment. Since they didn't want to be left behind, however, they all got up and followed the woman. After a few minutes of walking, they arrived at what looked like a training ground that looked like a huge jungle. The whole place was surrounded by fence with barbed wire and signs that told you not to enter. People were even more freaked out when a large centipede that was big enough to hold a human's head in its mandibles. Welcome to Training Ground 44, you maggots, Anko said with a smirk plastered on her face. Or as we like to call it, the Forest of Death. Naruto cracked his knuckles and said, sounds like some cheap horror movie title. Anko scowled slightly before she vanished from sight. She then reappeared behind Naruto with kunai in her hand. She was about to cut his cheek and drink some of his blood when she felt a kunai being pressed against her abdomen. She felt a pair of kunai, one from Haku and one of Chujiro, being pressed against the back of her neck. I wouldn't do that in front of my teammate Snake-chan, Naruto said with a smirk. Now I suggest you let me go before someone gets hurt. Anko normally wouldn't back down from such a challenge, but she decided to. Now then, on to the second part of the exam. The special jonin said, your goal is to gain a scroll from an opposing team. A heaven scroll for an earth scroll and vice versa. While inside the forest, you will have 5 days to acquire the scroll from an opposing team while dodging whatever lives in there. Once you acquire a scroll, head to the tower in the middle of the forest. Understood? After gaining nods from the surrounding genin, she smiled slightly. Now you can go get a scroll for your team from the shack over there, Anko said. Once all the scrolls are given out, the exam will begin. Under no circumstances are the scrolls to be opened. Now get your scrolls and get ready. I want to get this over with. I got a big plate of dango waiting for me at home. Everyone couldn't help but sweat drop at that. All the teams then proceeded to get their scrolls. Naruto and his team got a heaven scroll. Upon gaining the scrolls that they needed, they headed toward a specific gate that they were assigned. After a few minutes of waiting, Anko's voice sounded through an intercom. "Okay maggots," she said, "the second part of the exam will begin soon. Before it starts, I have one more word of advice, just don't die." With that, the gates flew open and the competitors launched themselves into the forest to search for their quarries. The two Kumo teams converged a few minutes after they entered the forest. The leader of the all-guy team said, "Okay. We find the Hyuga girl team and take her. After that we get to the next part of the exam." "Understood?" Everyone nodded. Secretly, team with the two girls were slightly disgusted. The blonde and redhead on the team were disgusted at what they planned on doing to the girl, while the guy was just angry that they thought about taking such joy in doing this. Meanwhile, Naruto used the force to focus throughout the forest. "Haku Chujuro," Naruto said, "I went through the minds of a pair of Kumo teams. Both of them are intent on finding a Hyuga that are participating in the exams. One team with two girls are set to seduce one male, while an all-guy team is assigned to kidnap another female Hyuga and, most likely, use her as breeding stock." Haku snarled to herself. She had heard about such atrocities. In fact, she had been threatened a few times by the hunter Nin when she was with Zabuza to be used as such. She was not going to allow that to happen to somebody. Chujuro himself was angry because he had always found an issue with the whole bloodline genocide, and now some nuts were going to use someone like that. It was just plain sick. "Let's find these guys and take them out fast," Naruto said as he reached out with the force. His eyes widened under his hood and said, "It looks like we might be too late." Meanwhile, Hinata, Shino and Sai were not having a good day so far. Well, it started out good, but now it stunk. It started off well since they managed to pass the first test. It got better when they managed to trap another team with a bunch of leeches. After that, things quickly went down the toilet. On their way to the tower, they had been intercepted by a group of all-male Kumo ninja. After Shino inquired their intentions, the leader, rather arrogantly and almost perversely, said that they were going to take the Hyuga back to Kumo to reproduce their powerful eyes. He also mentioned something about someone keeping the girl as a pet. Needless to say, Shino and Sai weren't going to let that happen. Sai may not have been well educated in emotions, but if there was one thing he was familiar with, it was loyalty. The three immediately confronted their enemies. Though valiant, their efforts were in vain. Sai's ink merely proved to be a better conductor for lightning chakra due to the components in it. Sai was pretty much electrocuted and then tied up with ninja wire. Shino found himself against the human equivalent of a human bug zapper. He quickly had to withdraw his hive when his opponent activated a right-on technique. Unfortunately, that only left him open in taijutsu, which was not his best field. He was basically beaten to a pulp and tied up himself. Surprising, out of all of them, Hinata was doing the best. She was against the leader of the three and was faring well. So far she had managed to block off some of his chakra points, but he had also managed to land a few blows himself. "You're better than I thought, little girl," the leader said. "It's going to make it all the more fun when I break you." The man then went through a few hand signs and said, "Lightning release, thunder ball." The Kumo genin unleashed a ball of electricity from his hands. Hinata took a stance before spinning around. Rotation. A dome of chakra wrapped around her and blocked the ball of electricity. The lighting was then reflected backwards at the user and knocked the man off his feet. Hinata stopped spinning and looked out at the smoke. Once the smoke cleared, it showed a destroyed log. Hinata didn't have time to react as she was suddenly struck from behind. The Kumo genin grabbed her from behind and then slammed her down on the ground hard before he slammed his hand onto her body and sent a sudden volt of electricity through the young girl's body. Hinata tried to move, but she couldn't. "You like it?" the Kumo genin asked. "It's a special technique that sends a volt of electricity through the target's body, paralyzing them." He leaned down and touched her face. Now the Reiki said he wanted a female Hyuga for breeding. He didn't say anything about wanting her unspoiled. He tore Hinata's coat to pieces, revealing a black long-sleeved shirt underneath, and that she was much more developed than people her age. "Oh," he villain said, "look what we got her, boys. This is going to make it fun." He reached out before he stopped and said, "Wait, if she fights it won't be as much fun. Hey guys, let's kill her teammates. I want to see if that'll break her beforehand. It will make things much easier." Hinata's eyes widened. She tried to move, but she couldn't. The two Kumo genin smirked before taking out their kunai and walking over to the tied-up Sai and Shino. "Well," Sai said, "at least we went down fighting." Shino nodded and said, "At least we didn't die humiliatingly." The two Kumo ninja were about to plunge their knives into the two Konoha nin's head when a pair of saban flew out of nowhere and caught them in the shoulders. The two cried out in pain. They spun around to see Naruto, Haku, and Chujuro standing on a nearby branch of a tree. "Disgusting," Naruto said. "You would do this to a woman just for your own pleasure. I know orders are orders, but this is ridiculous." The leader of the three scoffed and said, "Can it you carry freak show? This is Kumovicure business. If you don't like it, screw you." Naruto cracked his knuckles and said, "It may not be my business, squirt, but I will not allow such a heinous act to happen. Not while I'm breathing." The second of the Kumo nin smirked and said, "I guess we'll just have to fix that. Then maybe we can have a little fun with that girlfriend of yours." Haku snarled. The genin who spoke immediately felt his voice catch in his throat. "Hey Ichigo," the leader said, "you okay?" The now identified Ichigo reached for his throat and found a samban stuck in his throat. The needle was soon joined by others, 3 more in his throat, and 1 right in his heart. The boy then collapsed to the side with a light thud. Ichigo. The second on yelled, "Oh, you've done it now!" The man was about to rush forward when Chujiro jumped down. The blue-haired boy slammed his fist into his stomach, making him double over. At that moment the man ripped his sword off his back before slamming it into his chest, cracking the ribs and actually crushing the heart. Both Chujiro and Haku looked sickened. They managed to swallow the bile rising in their throats and fought down the urge to vomit. The leader of the 3 now stood against the annoyed-looking Naruto. "I don't care who you think you are," the genin roared, "I'll tear you apart." Lightning release, thunderball volley. The genin unleashed a flurry of lighting balls. To high S, and everyone who didn't know of Naruto's powers shocked the balls were deflected as he walked forward. The Kumo genin fell to one knee as the jutsu had used up quite a bit of his chakra. Naruto now stood less than 1 foot away from the genin. In utter desperation, the man unsealed a spear he had in a scroll and shot it forward. To his joy, the spear pierced his chest and exited his back. Sai, Shino, and Hinata looked shocked at how easily the Ma had been dispatched, and a look of shock spread on their faces. Haku and Chujiro just stood where they were. They both knew Naruto wouldn't die so easily. They decided to let the good part come. The Kumo genin was laughing hysterically before he said, "I should have known you were all show. Now that you're out of the way." The man was cut off by a dark chuckling. He looked up in horror to see Naruto with his head hung chuckling. The chuckle then turned into full-blown laughter. The smell of urine and defecation made everyone gag. Naruto then stepped forward, sending the spear deeper and deeper into his chest until he was standing right in front of him. The hooded blonde then reached out and grabbed the boy's throat before there was a loud crack. The genin then fell to the ground dead. Naruto pulled the spear out of his chest and let it fall to the ground. To the Konoha nin, what looked like black and red chakra vines covered the wound and healed it. What a bloodline, Sai thought. Danzo-sama will be very interested to hear about this. Shino thought, interesting healing abilities. I'll have to watch out for him in the future. Hinata's mind was blown pretty much. Naruto examined the body of the genin he killed and found an earth scroll. What scroll do you need? Naruto asked the still-bound Konoha nin. We have both scrolls needed, Sai said. Good, Naruto said, we're going with you to the tower. Hinata finally started to get feeling back and rose up before asking, why? Chujiro answered, what better way to improve relations between village than to help out another team? Besides, there is another Kumo team out there and I prefer not to run into that one. They weren't as arrogant and won't be as easy to defeat. Hinata looked nervous and nodded in understanding. With that, the team went toward the tower. All the while, teammate looked at the 3 in surprise, as they had never expected a foreign team to try and help them before. Oh well, they were almost killed and used by a bunch of crazies, so they weren't complaining about the help. Chapter 9, Prelim Smackdown. Since they had gained the scroll, they needed quickly Team Naruto, and teammate had arrived at the tower without much difficulty. There was the occasional giant centipede, but other than that they were good. Upon arriving, Naruto told one of the jonin about what happened. Sai and Shino were taken to an infirmary to be looked, while Hinata was taken to a mental doctor to see if there had been any traumatizing effects. A few minutes after reaching the place, Naruto could have sworn he felt a very large amount of rage fixated from somewhere else in the village. Naruto guessed that the old Hokage heard about what happened. Over the course of the next few days, more teams arrived. So far, all the Konoha teams had made it, sadly including Team 7, the other Kumo team, a team of Kusanin, and the Suna team. At the moment, everyone stood in the main gathering room. All the teams stood ready and watching. Naruto was a little jumpy, however. Ever since the last Konoha team had arrived, Naruto had been sensing a dark aura coming from the Uchiha. He couldn't quite place it, but his chakra seemed even more foul than before. When the old Kage finished his speech, it was explained that there would be some preliminary rounds to decide what few would be going on to the finals. When he asked if anyone wanted to drop out, Kabuto did. A large screen popped out of the far wall. The screen randomly went through names before it landed on Sasuke and one of the genin on Kabuto's squad. The fight was relatively boring in Naruto's opinion. Sasuke foolishly thought he would win easily and charged in blindly. That cost him dearly when he found out the hard way that his opponent was able to drain chakra through physical contact. When Sasuke finally counteracted, Naruto saw why he sensed so much darkness. Black emkert started to spread over his body, but Sasuke willed it back down. He then beat the purple-dressed genin with a powerful-looking taijutsu move. He noticed that the team that he met earlier looked a little upset, but he put it away for later. The next match was between Shikimura Nara and Kin, respectively, from Leaf and Sound. The lazy genin from Konoha was off to rocky start since the girls started throwing some bomb with bells and some without bells. Shikimura learned that the Sound village lived up to its name. The bells on the samban were being manipulated by ninja wire held by Kin. Each time the bells rang, the noise caused a reaction in Shikimura that made him dizzy and messed with his vision, making him see multiple Kin. Shikimura then gained the upper hand when he used a jutsu called Shadow Position to take control Kin by using the very miniature shadow caused by the ninja wire. Shikimura then ducked backwards, making the Sound kunoichi slam the back of her head against the wall, effectively knocking her out. The next match was between Kankuro from Sand and Kabuto's second teammate. The fight was pretty short. Kabuto's teammate revealed that he could dislocate his joints, making himself much more flexible. He wrapped his arms around Kankuro and threatened to break his neck should he not surrender. When Kankuro didn't, he followed through with his threat. Then the lifeless body of Kankuro sprang to life and wrapped multiple wooden arms around the purple-clad genin. The bandaged pack on Kankuro's back unraveled, revealing the real Kankuro, and that the one that Kabuto's teammate fought was just a puppet. The puppet then broke the man's neck. The next match was between the pale-skinned Kumo girl, now identified as Samui, and one of the Kusa genin. The boy she was fighting made a remark about her, and said something about getting a free ride later. This apparently made the girl angry. Her face was impassive, but Naruto could feel her anger. While the fight progressed, Naruto walked over to the Kumo team and said, "You guys have a lot of nerve." The Kumo looked at the boy and their sensei, a large muscular man with sunglasses and swords on his back, asked, "What you talking about, boy?" Naruto answered, "You nearly caused a war by kidnapping an heiress years ago, and then you try the same thing yet again with the same heiress. Does your Kage have a learning disability or something, because I highly doubt any reasonable Kage would make the same mistake twice." The large man looked confused before asking, "Boy, what are you talking about?" "My brother thinks you gained power yourself, no doubt. I'm not very good at rapping." "Roll with me on this." Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, "Really? Because me and my team had to kill a group of Kumo nin that were trying to kidnap the white-eyed girl over there?" The man looked a little more confused and looked at his students before saying, "Did you three know about this?" "If you did, I'm gonna be pissed," the boy with the sucker said. "We got a message from a jonin. He gave us the mission and told us that you already knew Kurabi-sensei." The now identified Kurabi said, "Let me see that for a minute." The remaining girl on the team handed the large man the flyer for the mission. Kurabi read it over. It looked legit until he noticed the seal that made it authentic. "Kids," Kurabi said, "you were duped. The approval seal is all wrong. Big Bro only used the bull stamp in the fall while he uses a lighting stamp in the summer." Both genin looked shocked when they heard that. Everyone was ripped out of the conversation when they felt a wave of killing intent. They looked to find the Kusa genin with his hands in very dangerous positions, both of which were currently groping the girl. A rare look of rage came over the blonde Kumo Kunoichi's face, and she slammed a powerful punch into the boy's face, knocking him away. She then went through hand signs and yelled, "Lightning release! Lighting shot!" A large bolt of lighting shot out, and struck the genin, burning a hole in his chest. Kiba on Team 7 nearly wretched when the smell of blood and burning flesh reached his nose. Samui was claimed the winner, and she returned to the banister. Naruto left the team to their own devices. Naruto could feel her shock when they found out that they had been tricked when he went to watch the next match. The next match was Oma, the boy on the Kumo team with the sucker, fighting Kiba. The dog user and his partner tried to flank the boy, but that didn't work out as Oma simply punched the dog user and his partner away before brandishing the tanto he had on his back. Akamaru was down for the count soon after with a large gash on his back. It wasn't back enough to kill or cripple the dog, but it was enough to hurt him. Kiba tried to avenge his fallen partner, but was then the victim of a right-un jutsu that messed up his nervous system, making it hard for him to move. He was then the victim of a brutal beatdown. The next match was between the reed head on the Kumo team, identified at Karui, against the second Kusa genin. This one wasn't as arrogant as the first one, nor was he as perverted. The fight was actually pretty decent in Naruto's eyes. The fight started with a mix of kenjutsu and taijutsu. Sparks fuel with each clash of steel, and the impacts could be heard with each kick and punch that made contact. After a few minutes, both of them were breathing hard while sporting gashes and few bruises. The Kusa genin put up his sword before unleashing a Doton jutsu that formed a large spike of earth. With amazing agility, Karui not only dodged the move, but counterattacked with a powerful slash that made the genin black out from pain. All in all, everyone learned that the team from Kumo was tough. They had all proved to be competent in kenjutsu and taijutsu as well as right-un jutsu. It also showed that they were smart, since they didn't show all of their strengths at once, saving their bigger, more impressive moves for the final confrontation in the end. The next match was a fight between Tenten and Temari. The guys were happy to see a ninja cat fight happen. Tenten revealed herself to be a weapons mistress as she unleashed projectile after projectile. To her horror, Temari was a wind maiden and was able to deflect them all with her fan. Tenten then decided that it was time to unleash the big guns. She took out 2 medium-sized scrolls and unleashed a technique she called Twin Rising Dragons. The unsealed a huge amount of weapons that she was able to control via ninja wire tied to the ends. She tried to cut Temari with all of them, but the blonde Suna Kunoichi simply opened her fan all the way and deflected them all with a single gust of wind that also cut the ninja wire. Temari then unleashed a technique called Futon, Wind Scythe. The wind jutsu formed a tornado around Tenten made of razor-sharp wind that lifted her up into the air and cut her up. She was cut her up even more when the weapons around the arena were picked up. As the bun-haired girl fell, Temari held out her fan and let the girl crash down on it. Or at least it would have if Lee had appeared on top of her fan and caught his teammate. Lee then gave her a hate-filled glare that none of his team had seen before. The oddly dressed boy then took his teammate to the medical wing. The next match was between Sai from Team 8 and Niji from Team Guy. As soon as the pair had entered the match, Niji was declared the victor by fate. This made Guy roll his eyes and shake his head at his student's attitude. Niji immediately activated his Byakugan and tried to end the fight. To his surprise, Sai dodged the attack and another. This continued until Sai suddenly threw out an uppercut that Niji didn't see coming and was knocked back a few steps after shaking off the shock. Niji charged again, intent of making Sai pay for his ignorance. Guy turned to Kurenai and said, "You trained your student well, Kurenai-san. No one has been able to last this long against Niji before." Kurenai smiled at the praise and said, "Thank you. You should see what he does when he actually starts trying." Guy looked shocked at the woman before turning his eyes back to the match. Sai was now smacking Niji's attacks again. This time Niji anticipated the uppercut, but he was prepared for a sudden kick to the solar plexus. Sai then took out a sketch pad and a picture formed almost instantly. Then the picture of birds on it suddenly flew off the pages and flew at Niji. The shocked boy responded by suddenly spinning around, forming a dome of chakra around him. Rotation. The birds were all deflected off the dome and splattered into ink. "No way!" Guy yelled. "He shouldn't know that." Kurenai looked at the man and asked, "What are you talking about?" Guy answered, "That move is only supposed to be used by the main branch of the family. The fact that he knows it is a testament of Niji's strength." "It looks like your genin might lose after all, Kurenai." Kurenai said, "No match is etched in stone, Guy. We'll just have to wait and see." As soon as Niji stopped spinning, Sai formed a quick hand sign. The ink on the ground formed snakes before they converged on Niji and tied him up in a vi-like grip. Sai then appeared behind him and placed his tanto at Niji's throat. "Surrender now," the emotionless boy said, "or I'll spill your blood all over the floor." Bug eyes. Niji, despite his pride, decided to surrender. While he walked back up to the banister, he was wondering how he lost. Fate was supposed to declare him the winner, yet he had been beaten by this strange commoner. Could fate not be as powerful as he threw it was? The next match was between Haku and Chuji from Team 10. The match was relatively quick. When Chuji used his enlargement jutsu, he made himself a bigger target. Haku unleashed a flurry of ordinary saban that were coated with a special serum that caused paralysis. When Chuji found out he couldn't move, it was too late. Haku then charged forward and started beating furiously on Chuji's unprotected head. Pretty soon the boy was unconscious and fell to the ground in a heap. He was then rolled off to the side of the medical bay because he couldn't fit in the banister due to his enhanced size. Lee then arrived back from the medical bay from visiting 1010 and asked, "What did I miss?" The boy was shocked when he heard that Niji was beaten. He was however happy since it proved that even the strongest of warriors could fall. He was a tad bit upset however since it wasn't him that proved it. However, he did make a mental note to challenge Sai for a battle sometime. The next match was Chujiro vs Sakura. As soon as the pair got into the ring, Sakura started spewing insults saying that she was going to win and prove herself to her. "Sasuke-kun." In the banister, Sasuke grew steadily more annoyed as the pinkette continued her tirade. Despite his normally gentle nature, Chujiro grew very annoyed. When the pink-haired fangirl finally finished, he ran forward, drew the sword off his back, still wrapped up, and slammed it down on Sakura's head with a resounding clang. Everyone winced at the sound and cringed at the cracking noise that came from Sakura's head. Sakura fell to the ground immediately with a concussion and some scrambled brains. The medics immediately took the girl to the medical bay to see if she could be treated. Zabuza, Naruto and Haku were surprised that the normally bashful Chujiro just smashed his opponent's skull in. "Looks like you're actually starting to rub off on the kid," Zabuza said to Naruto. "He's really starting to come out of his shell." The next match was Gaara versus the final Kusa-genin. The match started with the Kusa-genin immediately firing off an Doton jutsu that was blocked by Gaara's sand. The boy tried Doton after Doton, but nothing was getting through. No matter what he tried, he always was blocked. When the boy tried getting in closer, he tried to pummel Gaara himself, but was caught up in the sand. Gaara then used the control over the sand to pull the Kusa-genin's arms out of their sockets, and slice his Achilles tendons, the tendons located at the back of the legs between the heel and the bottom part of the tibia. Up in the stands, Kankuro, Temari, and their sensei Baki looked at each other. No matter how many times they saw the changed Gaara, it would always surprise them when it didn't kill his opponents. The next match was Hinata of Team 8 versus Ino of Team 10. Ino immediately tried to get Hinata to forfeit the match by shooting insults and trying to whittle down what confidence she had. At least she did, until Hinata surprised her by actually staying confident. While training with Sai and Shino, Hinata's confidence rose up gradually. Now it took a lot more than a few cruel words to get her down. Ino would try to use her mind transfer jutsu on Hinata to make her submit. Thanks to her Byakugan, however, Hinata was able to see a chakra outline of what looked like Ino. She dodged the attack and ran at Ino's down body. After a few Juken strikes, Ino wasn't able to use chakra anymore, and when she returned to her body, she found herself with Hinata's sandal on her neck. Begrudgingly, Ino surrendered. As she made her way up, she sent a quick glance at Gaara and actually gained a slight blush. The next match was Shin from Konoha versus Saku from Sound. Saku showed up with his arms in a pair of slings. Naruto didn't know why, but he felt residual dark energy off the boy that felt like the darkness Sasuke had earlier. Saku revealed that he was able to use one arm. He then revealed that he had a cannon in his hand that could be used to fire large blasts of air. He got close to Shino and fired a blast that seemingly beat the Abirame air. He was proved wrong when the Shino he destroyed dissolved into a pile of bugs. The real Shino stood a little bit away. It was then that bugs started swarming around his hands. Zaku then noticed there was a huge swarm of insects behind him that was capable of sucking the chakra out of someone. The sound ninja then revealed that he could use his other arm and aimed at both Shino and the swarm. The sound genin tried to fire, however, he found that his cannons were plugged up by the insects, and his arms promptly exploded. Zaku was carried off. He would most likely be dead in a few hours. The proctor for the finals, Hate, noticed that there were only 3 contestants left and said, "Would the remaining contestants Rock Lee Dosu and Naruto Fukyu come down to the ring?" The 3 came down and looked at the proctor. The sick-looking jonin said, "Due to the odd number of remaining contestants, the next match will be a 3-way match between the 3 of you. Are there any objections to this decision?" No one objected. "Good," Hate said. "Now the final preliminary match between Naruto Fukyu, Dosu, and Rock Lee will begin." Lee immediately started off the fight by launching himself at Naruto. The Kiri-nin dodged the attack to the left and to the right. Finally he caught Lee's leg and then threw him over his shoulder. Just as Lee was righting himself, Dosu charged at Naruto with the strange device on his arm exposed. Naruto blocked the arm and immediately felt a dizzying effect. Naruto stumbled back and said, "So you sound just like your teammates?" Dosu nodded and said, "Yes. This device amplifies impact vibrations, turning it into a sound wave that can be manipulated by my chakra and affects whomever I'm fighting." Naruto smirked and said, "You know you really shouldn't reveal the mechanics of a weapon to your enemy." Naruto then charged at Dosu. Dosu rose his arm to block, but was shocked when Naruto jumped over him. As soon as Naruto landed, he threw out a punch to Dosu's back, making a loud cracking noise before he grabbed Dosu by the back of the neck and slammed his face down on the concrete, effectively knocking the sound genin out. Leaf Hurricane. Naruto brought up both arms and hardened them with biomass to withstand the sudden kick from Lee. Naruto pushed against the attack before throwing the green-clad genin away. Lee caught himself just in time to avoid another punch thrown by Naruto. Guy turned to Zabuza and said, "You trained your student well." Zabuza replied, "You trained yours pretty good yourself. I have to say I'm impressed. I didn't think anyone could learn taijutsu to such a high extent." Guy nodded and said, "Lee is intent on becoming a taijutsu master like myself." Zabuza grinned under his mask and said, "Let's see if he has the will and the guts to follow through with that dream." Back in the fight, Naruto and Lee were matching each other blow for blow. The pair were now in a grappling contest. "You have proved to have great flames of youth," Lee said, "but I'm afraid that I cannot lose here." Naruto grunted and said, "The feeling is mutual." The two then broke away from one another. As they did, Guy yelled, "Lee! It's time to show this Kiri ninja the full power of the springtime of youth." Naruto didn't like the sound of that. He ran at Lee, intent on knocking him out, but Lee dodged and jumped up on the statue in the middle of the room. He then pulled up his leg warmers, revealing weights underneath. When he dropped them, they formed huge craters in the ground. "Oh crud," Naruto thought. Lee vanished in a blur of speed and smashed Naruto in the face with a powerful kick. Lee then smashed Naruto again as he recovered from the first attack. A few impacts later, Naruto had fallen to one knee and was grasping his arm. Lee then appeared in front of Naruto and unleashed a wild haymaker. Naruto was sent flying and smashed into the wall, picking up a lot of debris and forming a large dust cloud. Hate looked at the hole and said, "Winner by knockout, Rockla." Hate was cut off by the sound of cracking stone. Everyone looked in shock to see the stone moving. The wall was then blown away, revealing some creature on the other side. Haku, Chujiro, and Zabuza recognized it as Naruto's armored form. This was different, however. The armor looked like it normally did, but the armor was sleeker and less rigid. The arms had what looked like large calluses on the knuckles, and well as clawed nails similar to his claw form, only there were 5 of them, and they were the size of a normal hand. Spike jutted out of his back, and his legs looked more like black armored boots with spikes on the tops of the feet. The face was completely blank, no mouth, no eyes, no nothing. The chest looked like it mimicked a body resembling the pectorals and a six-pack. It was clear that Naruto was just as surprised at the change as well. He glanced at his new body in surprise. He felt protected like his normal armor form did, but this felt lighter. "Incredible!" Guy yelled. "The flames of youth are so strong in him they allow him to transform." Everyone looked at him strangely. Naruto looked at Lee before he held up his hands in a boxing-style manner and bounced around on the balls of his feet. Lee charged and slammed his fist into Naruto's armored chest. Since Lee didn't know that Naruto's new body was armored, he found himself clutching his arm as pain rocketed through the limb. Naruto then unleashed a vicious combo of punches that knocked out a few of Lee's teeth before knocking him straight out with a haymaker. Black and red tendrils covered Naruto's body and he reverted back to normal. Hate finally came out of his shock stupor and said, "Winner by knockout, Naruto Fukiyu.As." Lee was taken to the medical bay. The winners went down to the arena and got placements for the final match. Match 1, Naruto vs. Oma. Match 2, Kari vs. Haku. Match 3, Samui vs. Hinata. Match 4, Shino vs. Sai. Match 5, Gaara vs. Sasuke. Match 6, Shikimura vs. Temari. Match 7, Kankuro vs. Chujiro. The Hokage said, "You all have your opponents. You have 1 month to prepare. Now go." As everyone left, Haku questioned Naruto. "What was that earlier, Naruto?" she asked. "I don't know," Naruto said. "I guess my body adapted to the situation. Since Lee was pounding me like that, I adapted to face an opponent that fast. I'll have to practice with it later." Meanwhile, a pair of yellow eyes watched them. "What if Naruto has Kurama dormant bloodline, And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.